Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Non-Essential Workers Podcast, left-wing podcast on media, politics, and much more. I am Alex.
I'm Aiden.
I'm Jason.
And this week, Jason will continue to wow and amaze with probably a large battery of articles.
Yeah, the magazines are loaded. I've come off a bad day of playing Battlefield and having bad experiences, so I'm going to try and lighten the mood and soothe my soul. And so we're going to begin by catching up with an old favorite character of ours. This from Reuters or however the fuck you say it.
Yeah, that's right. Reuters. Yeah.
Whatever. Proud Boys leader, freed from Washington jail, served time for burning banner at Black church. Remember this guy?
Yeah, the guy who pissed and shit his pants.
What?
Freed from Washington jail?
Yes, he was in jail.
But do time in prison, not whatever.
He was only serving a 4-month sentence.
Yeah, last time we talked about this guy, was he crying about being prosecuted?
Yes. I thought you would.
Yeah.
To see, the right wing's gone so insane. I thought you were talking about people who actually piss and shit their pants.
I can't confirm or deny that for this individual.
Yeah, it's the guy who, with a gun, stole a flag off a BLM flag from a black church.
This is the guy who made it into one of our art before, right?
Yeah.
That's all. Yeah.
And he's making it back.
Alongside the much cooler orangutan.
Yeah, the orangutan put him to shame. Even the fucking cartoon of Kissinger put him to shame.
All right, I just want to let the people know he's out. He's back and he's ready to mingle.
Everyone watch out. He's free.
Every black church, watch out. Keep your banners tucked away.
Also, I looked at him from last time. He's not even white. He's like Hispanic.
Yeah, he's Hispanic.
He's not.
So let's move from...
He's like the black white supremacist gag that Chappelle did, but it's not even a joke.
Let's move from vigilante violence to state-sanctioned violence. This from CNN. This Silicon Valley city just voted to institute first-in-the-nation gun ownership requirements.
What?
Remember when we joked about one of the southern states, governors banning masks? And it was like, oh wait, that's wrong because that's insane. Well, better start saving for that gun.
This has to be so misleading, right? Especially in a one, what is a Silicon Valley city?
Oh, you're reading this as the requirement to own a gun.
Yes, because that's what the reading is.
I read it as institute first in the nation gun ownership requirements, like ownership for gun requirement. I didn't understand it.
It has to be what it actually is, but
yeah.
Wait a sec. Am I insane?
No, you're not insane because it does kind of read like that, but
the grammar is baffling, but I'm pretty sure they're talking about gun restrictions, not gun requirements, in the sense that they literally require you to own a gun. I mean, technically there are countries like Switzerland that do actually require you to own a gun, but that's because they have an antiquated militia system that actually is the basis of their security. We don't use that because we have a professional military, so I don't know why we would make a requirement like that.
Okay, you know what? You're right. I'm the one who's too insane. Because I was like, what near Silicon Valley, California city would do such an insane thing?
Especially because that's not the part of California that's the most reactionary.
Yeah, it turns out it's San Jose, and they're saying, no, everyone who does own a gun has to pay a fee and carry liability insurance.
Yeah, that's what that made me assume.
Which is great. Oh, great. I accidentally started with good news.
Yeah, the grammar was horrible, but I intuited their meaning despite their grammar.
But see, I'm so mind destroyed that when it's midnight and I'm on my phone in bed and I'm just browsing through CNN articles, I see city has first in nation to have a gun requirement. I was like, all right, that tracks.
Everyone's packing heat or they're going to jail.
Yeah, it's like the Wild West, man.
I thought maybe it was the first law of the metaverse. You have to have a virtual gun. Also, you guys know the sovereign territory of Silicon Valley, which holds multiple cities within its borders?
Well, Alex and I were having a discussion about this recently. In fact, it'll get to our discussion later about the movie Dredd, where cities are no longer just cities and suburbs aren't suburbs, because there's if you could study urban planning and get into all this stuff like exurbs and urban sprawl and the way cities kind of satellite and spread out and spread their industrialization into the suburbs that are supposedly supposed to be so different. And so in Dredd, there's Mega City 1, which is a city from Boston down to Washington, D.C. It's a single city with 800 million people in it. And so, that is a fairly realistic future where the cities are becoming more interconnected, and all of it's going to be urban because that's where the growth is. So I can imagine, Silicon Valley cities stretching from, Santa Clara to San Diego to San Francisco, like just cities all the way.
Yeah, apparently you're right. I'm looking it up right now. I thought this was literally just a part of San Francisco, but apparently it's much larger. It's like it's
San Jose is its own
this
place.
entire region. Well, no, I know San Jose is. I didn't realize these were all considered Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Apparently it's an enormous region compared to just the city.
Yeah, Silicon Valley is not the name of like a proper place. It's like a
bear in mind, we're East Coast boys. Like we don't know this part of the country very well.
I mean, I've been there, but the point is, with it before the year 2077, some Elon Musk like loser is gonna make Night City. Like it's just gonna happen. There's gonna be more and more tech cities all throughout California.
It's just strange to me to like designate a multi-city area as like an incubation zone, but
yeah, it's the same as saying deplorables. It's a way to group them in as they all believe in X. They all have industry Y. They are like this. We are like that. It's just like how we group people. And
Silicon Valley feels like a high tech way of doing like the thing from Road Warrior where they're like Bullet Town,
Gas Town, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Like calling it Silicon Valley is just kind of a fancy way of saying like Computerville,
Tech Town.
Tech Town. Is that a new place in Fortnite?
Yeah.
Techno City 1. It's just
Tech Town.
Yeah, exactly.
An anime or something.
Yeah. Neo Tokyo. All right, let's actually, no. Any more thoughts about like this good policy that seems to totally bypass what people are trying to do, which is like make the gun companies pay liability insurance? Like, no, fuck it, put it on the individual.
So the policy was that if you have a gun, you have to take out insurance for what in case you hurt
Every
someone?
gun owner who lives there has to pay a fee for merely owning a gun, and they have to have active liability insurance.
What does that cover?
If you do gun violence, your insurance rate go up.
But the insurance covers like other people's medical bills or something?
It's liability. It's based on harm. So this measures aim to reduce the risk of gun harm by incentivizing safer behavior and easing taxpayers of the financial burden of gun violence. I don't know.
Which comedian was it? Was it there was a comedian who had a whole bit that's like, I would shoot you, but this bullet's too expensive.
Chris Rock had a whole
Chris
bit
Rock,
about make bullets $10,000.
That's what that reminds me of. It's like, I would shoot you, but my premiums would go so high.
Speaking of Dredd, don't miss if you're gonna pull the trigger.
All right, if we're gonna start talking about Dredd, we should start talking about Dredd.
No, we're letting it seep into their gray matter.
We're hyping, huh?
So it says they split the vote for this thing into two parts. The first was to approve the bulk of the insurance provision stuff, and the second was to approve the fees. And it all passed pretty easily. 10-1 and 8-3 for whatever.
If this is a urban sprawl area, that's about as solidly like democratic
for this
voting basis you can get. I don't know why they wouldn't be able to pass whatever the fuck they wanted on a local level.
To me, the issue is like, so the city council thinks this will be some great policy, but like, how many people in San Jose own guns? Is this almost like virtue signaling in policy form? You know what I mean?
Maybe, but it's not a bad thing. Like it's still good to
the whole premise of virtue signaling is you're signaling that you are virtuous. It's not.
Yeah, but there's virtue signaling that's totally like ephemera that has no actual implication, and then there's virtue signaling that actually does pass a decent policy. I think this is probably the latter.
Yeah, but let's just say, just for sake of argument, that 3% of residents in San Jose have guns. That it essentially is ephemera because it affects virtually no one.
It's also like whatever your view on guns, this is essentially. Once again, kind of the fees and fines model. It's just kind of gating out poorer people from being able to own guns.
Yeah, that's also true.
Because rich people can still pay liability, or probably more likely they'll just get their guns secretly or however they want to avoid this fine.
Yeah,
I guess it was my hubris to think that there was going to be a gradual.
No, there is of course going to be an NRA spin to this. That this is bad for black people. This is bad for poor people because they can't.
Actually, I take it back. If this is a flat rate, fuck that. That's pretty.
Well, I don't know if it's a flat rate. We don't know.
We don't know for sure.
Who cares?
Could be.
Well, to me, that determines the entire thing about whether it's a good measure. Because if it's like $500, then that's brutal on the poor and meaningless to the rich. As in,
Well, I guess we'll find out when we find out in 6 months when like the NRA sues them. So
yeah, exactly. When this becomes national news because like 3 cities have done.
We'll deal with it later.
The podcast takes a trip to San Jose.
All right.
And buys a gun.
Speaking of tech,
fucking title card.
Yeah.
The podcast buys a gun.
Exactly.
This also from CNN. Airstrike in Yemen, or airstrike kills 70 people and knocks out internet in Yemen.
Jesus.
What the fuck?
Airstrike or airstrikes?
Airstrikes, I mean, whatever, multiple.
I was just trying to say
American airstrikes.
It's a hell of an airstrike. Yeah, but yeah, I assume across several of it.
I just found myself when I saw, I was like, why? Why mention internet? What does that have to do with anything?
Yeah, service was disrupted in this human carnage.
Were they planning like a, what do they call those events? Like get a whole bunch of people. God, my broken brain.
What are you talking about?
What a whole bunch of
like a flash mob?
Yeah, that.
I mean,
maybe they were planning it on the internet.
I mean, what they airstrike like Verizon Wireless? Like, I don't understand what's going on. Like, they take out a network place.
Yeah, the Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and the US work together to take out basically Yemeni infrastructure while
it's even worse.
Dozens of people.
70 killed, 130 injured when an airstrike hit a detention center in Yemen.
Oh, good. So you're already in prison, then you get exploded. Well, that's grisly, but let's take it back briefly to something positive. How many Americans have fantasized about airstriking their ISP? I mean, I'm sure it's most, right? Like, that part is actually kind of funny.
Yes, everyone hates their internet service provider, but the problem is I don't want to lose internet. I want better internet, and we have done so.
Well, what it makes me almost think is like they're making this more palatable by being like, you would also want to knock out your ISP. Rather than being like, oh, this is a war crime.
No, there's no way that the fucking news writer, the first writer's like, well, here's a nice little positive spin to this story.
Let me ask you this. You asked the question. I will also ask the question. Why mention the internet?
I have no idea.
Because I don't know. I'm trying to think of why.
Aiden, any thoughts?
Where's this from?
CNN World.
I mean, the discrepancy between the two costs, so to speak, like I don't know, because CNN is nowhere near a critical of America enough outlet for me to actually genuinely think that they're trying to weave the narrative that, hey, look, we committed war crimes and also tried to cover it up by knocking out any ability to post about it from within Yemen. So that leaves me kind of just wondering, is it just like a distraction at the end?
You know what? Nope, you're literally right. Another airstrike on Friday hit the telecom building that they had, creating a nationwide internet blackout, and made coverage of the story and gathering details incredibly difficult. Oh my god.
Okay, so it was a dystopian thing, like making it so you couldn't cover the first strike.
Oh god.
Okay, so that's incredibly fucked, but I almost guarantee you that this report was not going to give an elaborate, detailed, like leftist critique of disinformation.
No, because it's not opinion. It's barely saying this.
It's just stating just the facts, right? So,
isn't that
why would it even mention it? That's so strange.
Here's the event. Here's what Doctors Without Borders had to say. Here's what a couple other groups that are speaking about it have to say. Like, it's just a news broadcast. It's not an opinion.
Did you say these are U.S. airstrikes?
US coalition of
Saudi-led coalition, but that coalition includes us. So,
well, and also like they're all paid for and bought from us
and trained.
Yeah.
But this is a massive strike. Like, I know they've done a lot of strikes, but this is a pretty big escalation for what, to my knowledge, they promised they were going to be winding down.
Yeah. Well, see, this is one of the other reasons I brought up this article, because, over the last few months, there's been so much discussion nationally about leaving Iraq and being perceived as weak by conservatives and getting involved in war with Russia. Now it's like, there's still wars going on in the Middle East that we are a part of. Well, they're just not part of our emotional zeitgeist that gets us all like riled up.
Yeah, you're not hearing about Yemen on TV. This is not happening. Like, that is not covered by even the most progressive or critical news that we have in the mainstream.
Or if it is, it's a story like this, just a bland, here's an event that happened, move on.
Like, Citations actually did a good podcast on this where they mentioned they studied like 2 years of content on MSNBC and saw like 1 hour on Yemen.
Yeah.
So like it's not getting covered, so no one knows about it.
I mean, the thing about this in the context of the recent history of Yemen is, we're approaching now a decade of famine in Yemen as a product of sanctions backed by the U.S. And the whole idea of sanctions as propagandized is that it's a non-violent approach to aggressive foreign policy to coercive foreign policy. But we're just doing both. We're like, hey, we're going to starve them. That's not working. Let's just keep airstriking them, but not change the other policy.
What if we used both of the most violent methods at the same time?
Yeah, both is.
Yeah, it's the girl with the 2 tacos. Why not both?
Yeah, exactly.
Soft and hard violence.
So the Yemen thing's really fucked, especially because we're not even like acknowledging that it's us. Like we're pretending that this is like a Middle Eastern internal conflict between like Saudi Arabia and their neighbor, even though they're only doing it because we gave our tacit approval and funded them and trained them and sold them the weapons, and because we give ongoing tacit approval. Otherwise, they wouldn't feel like get away with it. So like this is a puppet state of ours doing what it wants with our full approval, which may as well be us. Like when you have a proxy conflict that you are completely empowered to both begin and end, then it's your conflict. It's ridiculous to pretend otherwise. So whether or not it is the Saudi Arabian government or our government literally pressing the button, it's our tech, it's our money, it's our training, it's our say-so. So it's our doing. Like I don't, it does not removed enough really for them to even pretend it's not our doing, but that's what they're trying to go for.
And they've been winning at that.
So the Yemeni humanitarian crisis is extremely bad at this point. Like it was bad in the first place, and now it's been, as Aiden said, like a decade of not only famine, but like disease epidemic. This was even before COVID because they weren't allowed to get full medical care, of arbitrary detention.
Not even allowed. Basically, all the industry has been destroyed in the country.
Right. It's just like war crimes in a lot of other countries where we intentionally target buildings that have serious civilian consequences, like hospitals and telecoms and everything. So, yeah, I mean, it's a lot worse than just knocking out the internet. I mean, that's a particularly sinister move as far as disinformation, but I mean, why even bother knocking out the internet? Because the fucking media won't cover what's going on. You have to go to some really, like, either you have to go to like Al Jazeera or some sort of more regional media that doesn't have the same blinders as American and most Western media, or you have to go to like the leftist adjacent media that we have. Which
to your point, I think that made sense why Saudi Arabia hit the internet, because they didn't want this being discussed in the region as much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once again, it's not. They don't give a shit about America. They don't care what America's opinion's on this is going to be.
Well, actually,
their own.
They do, to the extent that it might harm their interests. So, like, if the American public said we got to stop supporting the Yemen thing,
no, the American public's not going to say that.
Exactly, they won't.
Like the internet outage is to fuck over those people, not to prevent our coverage. All right, let's move to The Guardian for something that I think is arguably worse.
Also, before we do it, just real quick, the other thing it's trying to do is to keep the Yemeni population unaware of the degree of the war crimes, because every time that they do one of these strikes, it like pushes more people to the Houthis. So like the reality is that this is a civil conflict in Yemen, just like it's an international conflict. And so every time that there's like a horrific attack, it's basically a perfect propaganda opportunity for the side that the Saudis don't want to win to say, come join us.
Yeah.
So by preventing that from being broadcast, it's helping to keep a state of disinformation so people don't know what's actually going on, so that they keep the civil war tilting in their favor.
And to be fair, in the article, they mention, we talked with Doctors Without Borders. We talked to the Houthi-run media website that had an opinion on it. So,
yeah.
All right. Let's move to The Guardian. Now that science has defanged COVID, it's time to get on with our lives. And the subtitle is, as with any other interdictable disease.
Ineradicable.
I'm brain dead. Ineradicable disease.
It's much worse than you even thought.
Even though it wasn't ineradicable.
No, that's one of the sickest things I've read on COVID.
Prevention and treatment can be integrated into society.
We're going to integrate a deadly disease into our society before we integrate people into our society.
Prevention and treatment will be integrated.
As with any other disease that we easily could have eradicated if we'd actually tried, let's pretend it's ineradicable so we don't have to take any consequences for our behavior. Fuck off.
I wish we could interdict
COVID. They're calling ineradicable a disease that like people 2 decades ago were predicting was going to happen. We're trying to explain to us how we could prevent it from happening, and have successfully prevented 2 dozen other times with similar diseases. Fuck off. This is blatantly false.
You know how when you get a gash and you refuse to get it stitched or bandaged?
Can't be patched.
And you say that, it can't be patched. Yeah.
Okay, I don't know why we have to talk about this like every episode, because I know why, because the news doesn't listen to our podcast. But Here's the solution. You come up with a up-to-date vaccine that covers all recent variants. You distribute it worldwide over the course of a couple months at most. It's over. Then it's over. That's the end of it. That's all we ever had to do in the first place. It's absolutely eradicable. Saying it's ineradicable is honestly like, not only is it false, it's like an active attempt at disinformation to push an agenda. In this case, almost certainly an agenda that's just like, get back to work, fuckers.
The only possible way they're not being an asshole is if when they say ineradicable, they're not saying literally. They're saying the world does not have the collective ability and willpower and political savvy and trust in technology and science to make it eradicable.
Due to the collapse of the human spirit,
right?
This ineradicable disease,
But once again, like another pitfall of comparing it to the flu. The flu is ineradicable because of how it mutates every year and how minor it is overall and just how widespread it is. We're not going to come up with a flu curing vaccine that makes you immune forever because it's always going to be changing and adapting. But it's not nearly as viral and killing and damaging as coronavirus. So you can't just like, oh, it's just like the flu. It'll just be part of every winter now. Like, that's not how it works.
Yeah. Also, if we really wanted to eradicate the flu, we probably could. It's just that the amount of suffering and resources expended and effort globally needed to do that don't commensurate to its risk.
I don't know. I mean,
like if we locked down for multiple years to try to wipe out the flu, it would have a pretty huge impact on whether we could wipe out the flu.
If we did that young adult novel where where live underground.
Yeah, like it's not a big enough deal for us to take the kind of drastic measures you would need to wipe out the flu. But like COVID it's a very serious disease. It's a very serious problem, as we've seen by the massive death toll and the serious lasting health consequences. It's not even that similar. Like the fact that it attacks a similar part of the body is about it.
Health consequences that we haven't even seen the end of. Flu does not give you fucking brain damage.
Like when we're dealing with the fucking, fallout of Chernobyl style long-term effects of this, suddenly people are going to be like, man, I guess we should have done basic logical responses to this in the first place, whether it be using what's available to us, like anti-vaccine or anti-mask.
Why are you being so divisive, Alex? It's time for us to move on with our lives.
Or the fucking international community getting their shit together, not making this a for-profit issue, and just solving it globally at once. There's no other solution. It's so stupid.
This author makes a moveon.org. Let's move past COVID.
Yeah.
If you dwell on it any longer, COVID wins. You know how COVID won?
Right, it's like terrorists. Like we let the terrorists win.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's also like there's like an appeal to trust science, but it also like I mean we've basically already tried all over it, but like science is what also acknowledges all the imperatives that we aren't pursuing right now that we need to do to deal with emerging variants. So it's just like science has defanged it by positing a bunch of suggestions that no world leader has effectively followed from any major country with influence or control over vaccine supply.
We're at a peak right now of COVID problems. Like people are wearing N95 masks for the first time since the beginning of the pandemic, to my knowledge, as a broad policy.
Medical grade, right?
That is the worst it has been so far. How on earth is this the defanged COVID?
Well, because it's not the deadliest it's been. It's just the most viral it's been.
Yeah, but that's a huge problem because everyone who harbors it can now generate more variants.
Yeah.
So even if it's not immediately the most deadly, it's the most likely to become deadly.
That's why, according to this author, it's ineradicable. So just move on.
But that's an insane thing to say. We're at the worst it's ever fucking been.
Move on.
Yeah, but the GDP is fine, Alex.
Oh no, there's an even worse triple subtitle. Humans are social. We need to hug, dance, sing, and recognize each other's faces and smiles.
I think that's the most.
That's why people need to die.
That's the most convincing part of the headline, to be honest.
Is this some like fucking hippie like best of the worst tape title? What the fuck's going on?
No.
That's true. We need to socialize. Like it's terrible for our mental health, but we won't be able to safely until we fucking deal with COVID. That's a
also you can, if you're vaccinated and wearing a mask, you can hug and dance and sing. Like I don't see the problem.
Everyone who frames this as like everyone who wants to just survive and keep their grandparents from being murdered, they must hate love. Also, they must hate dancing.
Yeah.
Could you imagine, Alex? I'm looking at you, and then you put on a mask. Like I don't know who this is. I can't recognize you. Really?
Yeah, it's a Black Mirror. I just blur out. Yeah, it's absurd. I mean,
it's like the McFoyles with he's got the eye patch on, or he's got the fake mustache on.
We do not become like English Civil War Puritans who despise singing and dancing because we don't want to die.
That leads to witchcraft.
Like this is a either intentional or baffling subconscious confusion of what the argument here is. Everyone likes those things. It's whether we can do them without killing our family and ourselves. And anyone who's presenting it other than that is either an imbecile or a self-interested prick. Because it's not like anyone's been sitting indoors in their fucking like mini fallout shelters, like fucking fighting over toilet paper, going, "This is wonderful."
Yes.
And
two more weeks till Dance dies forever.
Yeah.
I will leave it up to the audience to read this article and decide whether the author is an imbecile or a monster.
Sometimes it's both.
Two options. Yeah.
Yeah. But like fuck off. We already know they're a monster because they called it ineradicable.
But once again, I said there's a caveat that maybe they're saying that from like a commentary perspective, not a whatever.
Yeah, it
They're
seems
just blackmailed
Let's move forward.
as a country.
This is a great one. This from Newsweek. Video of Kirsten Sinema shaking hands with GOP senators after the vote to kill the what was that bill?
Filibuster bill.
The voting rights one.
Oh, good.
Isn't it great when when the fucking who you think is like an ally, Boromir is like shaking hands with alerts?
Don't worry, I didn't think she was an ally.
What I'm saying is someone who's supposed to be an ally, but has the whole time been working their own end.
I remember the first primary season she was in, and everyone was so incredibly excited to get this young progressive bisexual woman in who was going to be the next AOC. And it turns out she's the most corrupt person we've got in there in the long time. It's really incredible.
I mean, she had on paper all the background, experience with financial distress. She had a progressive identity in Paul terms, and just
why didn't it work?
Why didn't it work?
What are we missing?
She literally started her career in the Green Party and then rose as a progressive advocate. She sold out harder than I think anyone has sold out in recent history. It's kind of incredible.
It's like she found the One Ring and just was supernaturally turned.
Yeah.
And she chose to vote against the John Lewis Act.
She's not even Boromir. She was Isildur.
Yeah.
She had the opportunity and she just didn't throw it in.
Oh, the first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Elrond is Bernie.
Elrond is come on, do it.
Do the progressive advocacy. And she turns around, no.
Suck my dick.
Yeah. She has tracked from in America, in an American framework, the actual left to center right and over in less than a decade.
The only way this could have been better if she was shaking their hand in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Under the stall.
Even I was man, I'm glad she got elected when she actually got elected. That was only a decade ago. She seemed pretty awesome, and she's apparently a massive fraud.
Yep.
It's just amazing.
All right, where do I want to go next?
Unless
you got any thoughts on it, Aiden.
Just there's a whole news cycle like this. The last time that she got press because she went to Mitch McConnell first and gave him a friendly smile after she flirtatiously voted no on some progressive bill. It's who she is now. And it is kind of amusing that this is still news anyway. Obviously it's not really, but that this could even be worth digital ink on a digital page.
All right, well, I've got an amazing story about another congressman. This also from Newsweek. Video shows Representative Dan Crenshaw argue with young woman for criticizing him at PAC meeting. Now, I know the details of the story. Have any guesses as to what this young woman was criticizing him about? Keep in mind, it's a right-wing PAC meeting. So everyone in there is a Republican.
So she is also a Republican.
Yes. The twist.
Probably stealing valor or something.
No.
He's always posing as if he's even more of a military badass than anything he actually did. I could definitely see some angry military mom being you're stealing my son's valor.
Aiden, you have a guess?
I know the story. So
okay, cool. So it's even wilder than that. So she accused him of being a fake Christian.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Because recently Dan Crenshaw went on the most cringeworthy podcast in the world. Jocko Willnick's podcast.
Oh.
Jocko Willnick is this bizarre former like U.S. Navy Marine, and like all his videos are in black and white because he's super serious. And he wrote this insane book about like extreme ownership. You have to own your beliefs. He's out of his mind. But they're having a discussion.
He's a big NFT guy.
Yeah, they're having a Peterson-esque discussion about like archetypes.
Oh god!
And so,
how the fuck did Jungian archetypes make it into like the neo-Nazi realm? That's so
Peterson,
weird.
Everyone liked him, even though he's like dying. Whatever. So we'll get to him later, maybe.
Is he a Bolsonaro now?
This Jocko episode is 4 hours long.
Yeah, he's trying to be even more right wing Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan's like, no, I'll go to the right. Okay, so here's what they said in the podcast.
Holy shit! This just
I know it's wild. It's like my Aaron Rodgers story. So Dan
Crenshaw
was talking about archetypes, and he's like, heroes are like convenient fictions, like Superman and Jesus. Now he didn't say it exactly like that, and the way the phrasing, he said Superman is a fiction. He said Jesus before that. And so this woman in the audience was like, you said Jesus was a fiction. You're not a real Christian. And it was amazing. And she was like, 20.
Caught with his fucking pants down. Yeah, all right. Yeah, he said it.
I mean, no, there is a way to interpret as what he was saying is, Jesus was a good guy, and characters like Superman are good guys. But Superman's a fiction. You can interpret it either way, but people are interpreting it very ungenerously to make him seem like he's not Christian. He may be not. I don't really care.
But yeah,
I just thought it was really funny.
It's great because it's the same way that he would interpret anything that was.
Yeah. Why would he give him a charitable reading? He doesn't give anyone else charitable readings. And also, he almost certainly is not like devout. The guy's like a complete narcissist. People who are that narcissistic have trouble believing in gods because it requires you to put someone else above you. Like, this is the reason Trump couldn't be religious, is because there cannot be a god larger than Trump. So,
I don't know, Alex. You're forcing my hand to the next story.
Oh,
am I?
Mm-hmm.
How terrible. Yeah, especially since, as much as we rag on it, like a lot of the central tenets of Christianity do not espouse selling out your constituents for wealth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is if you're like a gospel,
if you're a prosperity
gospel, yeah.
Selling out, no. But what about buying out? This from NBC News. Georgia pastor and wife charged with false imprisonment after people found in locked basement.
False imprisonment?
Investigators
unlawful?
Yeah. Investigators determined that 8 people in the basement, all with mental or physical disabilities, or both, were essentially imprisoned against their will.
What the fuck? Is this like The Road or something?
It's so bad.
Wait, they literally kidnapped people with disabilities in their church and locked them in a basement like a rap song?
Because they're a church, they are running a quote-unquote group home, even though it's unlicensed.
Why are they locked in?
So they got a call, the fire department got a call about someone having a seizure at the premises, and when they were there, they noticed a deadbolt on a basement door. And they're like, this is fishy. So they called the police to come investigate.
What the fuck?
It's really bad. Where is it? This family, the Bankstons, this pastor, controlled the finances, medications, and public benefits of the people they were keeping in the basement, and had sometimes denied them their medications and medical care. Yeah, so what do you think about using God as justification to kidnap people and steal their Social Security?
I mean, it's like a person, while plenty of pastors are just good community members, it affords you a kind of a credibility and a point of authority to manipulate people. It's the reason that there's such a reputation from religion critical people of religion being like a haven for hucksters and stuff beyond kind of whatever philosophical or intellectual criticisms you have, because it's just like an immediate reason to cede trust to someone else. And I'm sure there are many people like this, although hopefully not all as horrific as this.
No, these people are obviously deranged.
Over a dozen people locked in a basement. I mean, the stealing benefits is the least surprising thing of all this. Like the fact that they actually took the initiative to imprison these people is truly fucked up.
This is like Joseph Fritzl shit. This is like kidnapped in the rape dungeon.
Yeah, this is serial killer shit.
What the actual fuck? I mean, look, I'm not exactly the most pro-religious person you're gonna meet with, but even I find this shocking. This is insane.
I'm just grinning.
I don't.
Right.
How did they think this was going to end?
What they're allowed to feed the sick and homeless and poor. That's their job. That's what Christ told them to do.
I thought they'd start like a ministry in Puerto Rico.
Don't you remember? Don't you remember in the New Testament when Christ says, "Take their Social Security benefits and their Medicaid"?
Yeah, that's why he was such a socialist.
Yeah, render their Medicaid unto you.
Let he who is without sin cash the first fake check.
There it is. All right.
Beautiful.
Well, let's move up north to Canada. This from The Hill. Religious leaders push back against Canada's conversion therapy ban. Quote, ultimately, the dissenters, the ones who will not cave in, are going to be those who are faithful to the Bible.
Who's being quoted?
I don't know.
Putting a quote with no attribution is not very helpful.
That's the subtitle. I don't know I'm not going to read the article.
I'm just saying because it has quotes in it. Is all I'm saying.
I'm sure it's a quote from somewhere in the article that I'm not going to read.
Some religious crank, is the attribution. Yeah, it's kind of like saying ultimately those who are religious are religious. Okay, thanks.
Thoughts about conversion therapy?
I actually didn't realize Canada banned that. Good for you, Canada. Well, we should really have done that a long time ago as well, because it's evil.
The UK is also in the process of banning it.
Because it's not a real thing. Like, there's no medical... Even besides the ethical problems of sending children to a place against their will and performing...
Oh, it's not only children.
Well, what I'm saying is send especially children, but sending anyone to a place against their will. Even besides the problem of saying, like, we're going to convert someone for something that's not bad in the first place, it doesn't work. So it's completely pointless. It's like sending them to the hydroxychloroquine farm or like the ivermectin farm. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't productively change anything.
You know what is permanent and you know what does work on the human brain?
Sure.
Trauma.
Well, yeah, exactly.
They got plenty of that to dish out.
It has permanent effects, just not the ones they wanted.
Or is it? Bum, bum, bum.
The whole thing's a troll. Like, they're just trying to traumatize people and not make them not gay. Like,
or just ruin their lives.
Well, they succeeded already. Yeah, wild.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe I've gotten too dark too quick.
I mean, it's like, what do you say about this? It's just bad. I mean, it's just bad stuff.
Bad people,
bad people do bad things. This is bad. I've graded this an F on the goodness scale.
I just want to remind people. Now, I know this is probably Protestants because they're the ones who tend to do this the most, but definitely some Catholics do this. This is a country which, like, a few years ago at the most, was digging up the mass graves outside of Catholic high schools for indigenous people, where, like, they found the hundreds and thousands of children who were murdered by Catholic nuns and by Canadian missionaries. Is this really the time to be pushing in on how faithful you are to the Bible and how good that will be for people who don't want it at a location they couldn't choose to go to or not? Really, this is the moment to have that conversation, Canada?
How much? I would be willing to put some amount of money on a wager that the dissenters are like from America. They're not even Canadians. It's just like
exactly.
It's just like some coke-backed religious nut job group.
Oh, it's coke-backed, all right.
Yeah.
Got him.
One way or another.
Yeah, Carrie Fisher backs this bill. Yeah, it's really...
All right.
It's really amazing that this is... Like, I know that Canada is very similar to America in many ways, but this was not an issue I thought would migrate there to that degree. Because this is a kind of an evangelical, like, psychosis that certain parts of America really got into. It's especially like a Southern Baptist thing or like a weird kind of culty Christian thing. I know there are weird ass Christians in Canada. I just made fun of the whole thing a moment ago, but like, I hate when I see American culture exported like this. Like watch like Ninja Turtles or something. Like, fuck off. This is the worst part.
That's all we do, though.
Stop taking the evil shit. Like, we hate it. You shouldn't be admiring any part of it or replicating any part of it. I don't know. Like, am I missing something? Did like other countries independently come up with gay conversion therapy? Because that sounds remarkably specifically American.
I don't think we invented it. No. In fact, it screams to me like UK origin. Like it's the 50s.
Yeah, but their shit was more like eugenics, right? Like
frying
science.
Turing's balls, and
yeah, but chemical castration.
They probably tried conversion on him. He's like, it's not taking, so they got to take your nads.
Chemical castration by the state, though, was seen as like a secular eugenicist policy, which is also disgusting.
But why would secular people care about gay people being gay?
Because the UK government was fucked. Is that surprised? Because they're like reactionary as hell and they just didn't like gay people.
Yeah, I just don't see the connection to secular.
What I'm saying is the UK government is not a religious institution. I mean, technically, there's the Anglican.
There's a fucking state religion.
There is a state religion, but it's not. That's not why they were doing that.
Their fucking motto is "God save the Queen."
There wasn't like an Anglican pastor coming in to cut off his nads like that.
You don't know.
It wasn't directly related. The UK state was doing it in a secular capacity, whereas this is like private religious institutions in the US who almost always are the ones doing it. So this is very weird. It's weird that this like American religious cultural fetish that was insane from the very beginning is spreading.
I just don't think we're that unique, though. I don't think it's a uniquely American thing.
It may not be. I don't know.
The Western world.
Whether it's like a extremely creepy like concern for population growth, or it's just I think more common.
No, it's just the moralizing. It's just that we don't like sin. We want to undo.
Or you think about gay sex once, and you're like, that seems gross to me as a straight person. I'm going to make my entire treatment of people who identify that way terrible forever.
It's just the immiseration of people in front of God, so we can be happy. All right, let's move to the NFT corner. You've all been waiting for it. You all knew it was coming. This from Yahoo News and another from NBC Sports. Indonesian college student becomes millionaire after putting his selfies up for sale as NFTs as a joke. And then from NBC Sports,
we trained him wrong as a joke.
NFT of Antonio Brown exit video yields only $20,000.
Oh, wow.
That one made me sad because it's one of the most epic rant tirades, quitting of a team.
Who had the rights to that video to even sell it as an NFT? Were they the cameraman? Were they the company? What the fuck are they
probably the TV production people who aired the game.
Are the fucking like TV networks getting in on NFTs?
Of course, yes.
God damn it.
OBJ took half his salary in crypto and he's getting fucked right now. It's amazing.
Oh, God.
Yeah, Ubisoft is releasing NFTs.
We are being consumed like anus up by grift.
Oh, don't worry.
And gibberish.
All right, so what do you think about this Indonesian college student who's like, my life sucks, here's the selfies I've been taking for an art project I was going to do?
Yeah, good for him. It's the same way I feel about It's the same thing I feel about the fucking OnlyFans nurse. Good for you. You figured out a bizarre scam and made it work.
It's possibly the perfect critique of NFTs.
That he did it as a joke. Well, the whole like fucking Dogecoin is a joke, and now it's worth money. All this shit is a joke that turns real.
There's no logic to it at all. It's just it's a gambling. That's all it is. And like large gambling institutions, it's weighted towards a few who have figured out how to game the system and make the most money, as in the casinos themselves. And some people will randomly get wealthy.
Now anyone can be the casino.
Now 1 in 100,000 people can maybe be the casino for a day.
This reminds me of all those insane myths and folklore that are like, if a camera takes a picture of you, it steals your soul. Because now it's like we're literally selling the soul as a joke, but then sometimes it works. So it's like, okay, I'm selling one soul, and you take like a selfie.
I don't like. What are you talking about, soul?
Well, because there's when photography was first invented, a whole bunch of different people in a whole bunch of different cultures simultaneously came up with this fear of like, if you showed up on the photo, then like your soul was being stolen. And so the idea that NFTs are literally images, in this case, even of you yourself as like a selfie, and you could sell it, almost has like a Faustian bargain, like satanic exchange vibe to me. But that's literally what people were afraid of, and now we're leaning into it because it's cool.
He's the Indonesian Dorian Gray.
I mean, like NFT is just like the newest kind of. NFTs are kind of just the newest grift. I think the grosser aspect of them in like comparison to cryptocurrency is the kind of industrial transformation of art as purely a financial commodity, like that its worth is only equal to its transactional appeal or cost, which obviously art has been being sold for millions of dollars for many years now. But
yeah, but usually because rich people think it's good.
Yeah, exactly. So now it's just like, oh, this DeviantArt pic is only really worth any money if I can steal it and sell it as an NFT. I don't know. It's all very sleazy and gross.
Every part of this is both gross and dumb.
Yeah.
But the idea that like some random Indonesian college kid is like, take my Facebook photos and someone's like 3 million.
And then Antonio Brown, one of the best and most famous football players in the league, with his most epic tirade and like controversy yet, it only gets 20 grand. It's madness.
It shouldn't even get 20 grand. Every part of this is madness.
I'd pay 20 grand for that.
You can get that video for free at any time.
Oh no, you're right. I download the video. Okay.
Yes, it's not worth anything. What the actual like brain poison is making us say something like it's only worth 20,000, which makes sense only in context, but the context is gibberish.
Yeah, but you know what? Let's give credit to the headline. It doesn't say worth 20; it said yields 20. So they're admitting that it's not $20,000 of quality. It just that's what it got at market.
They tilled the fields, they planted the NFT seeds, and it only yielded $20,000 of produce. Insanity.
So NFT stands for non-fungible token. We've all seen this video, or we all could see it if we haven't seen it yet. That's fun. That means it's fungible.
You don't have extreme ownership of it.
Yeah, it's not verified in the blockchain.
Take a video of my colonoscopy and then put it on there and see how much money I can make for it. Like,
that was
the most insane garbage.
Alex, that would sell.
Yeah, and anyone who would buy it, I wouldn't want to sell to.
Those videos are crazy. I've watched some videos of like the doctor has this crazy camera and like robot device where he sticks it up your ass. It's amazing. He's got
someone's like, I will pay you $50,000 for your ass.
He's got the wire thing to strangle and kill the polyps. It's amazing. Fucking that skill required is nuts.
When feminism and other forms of like progressive response to modern culture came up with things like objectification, I didn't think it was going to be this literal. But we are literally like parceling ourselves out into like semi-fungible representations of ourselves.
The cultural zeitgeist is experiencing final brain death.
Yeah, but he didn't like cut his nipple off and sell it to someone. It's just an image. He didn't actually take anything from himself.
Yeah, and this is why you should invest only in the tungsten cube, because it's real.
But like, is he violating copyright now merely by existing because someone owns his likeness?
No, he owns his likeness. They're buying to own an image of his likeness.
His soul has been captured.
He's the one getting paid because he owns his likeness.
A non-refundable image likeness. Yeah.
All right. Well, in the sea of madness and me eating an apple, let's move to a voice of reason.
I somehow doubt that's where we're going.
From Jacobin, my favorite news source. Cryptocurrency is a giant Ponzi scheme.
Correct. Next.
All right, let's move forward.
The only outlet I actually buy a physical form from anymore.
They have a physical form?
Yeah, they're a magazine.
I didn't even know
that. All right, back to Newsweek.
Mm-hmm. Gonna be good, I'm sure. We're gonna agree with it.
Someone else read it.
Okay. CEO pay is not a systemic problem in America. Opinion.
This one's got
one word off, and they almost had a good headline.
Is America the bad word?
Yeah.
Because it should be the world.
No, it's just the word not.
Yeah. Yes.
In case that wasn't obvious.
The CEO pay is systematic problem, not.
Was this written by the CEO of Goldman Sachs? What was it written by Wormtongue?
No, it's actually worse than that. It's written by this dumb lady who said, I read an amazing article from the former CEO of GE, and he really convinced me.
Oh, there you go.
I spoke to the ghost of Henry Ford.
So we're reading the fucking scraps of some better thinker who was self-interested that she's filtering through for us.
Yeah. She
is the plankton feeding on the fucking leftovers. I don't know. This is garbage.
No, I'm doing the gay conversion therapy. I'm just at the point where I'm shocking your balls.
Why do you need this as an opinion? The vast majority of Americans are either A, totally not sold on this and never going to be convinced, or B, totally sold on this and they love it. Who is this for?
They're trying to convince the Ken Bones.
Yeah. You have to throw the Ken Bones and see how they roll.
Simply work 200 plus times harder than your average worker.
200? More like 350. That's where the average is
Yeah,
going.
give me 350.
The best I can do.
Oh, by the way, she's a resident fellow at Harvard University's Kennedy Institute of Politics.
Yeah. Surprising.
And she looks like a bald eagle.
I'm banging my
What
forehead.
was
That
that
was
noise? That was a really unpleasant noise.
That was me banging my forehead against my mic.
Intro to like a Gorillaz song.
All right. I think we'll save the Supreme Court stuff for a couple minutes. In the interim, let's go to culture.
Oh, savor these minutes, ye lucky few.
From Yahoo, Joe Millionaire contestant immediately sent home after developing feelings for a crew member. You hear about this?
What's the problem?
It's a really funny story.
Is Joe Millionaire like a pun?
So 20 years ago or more, there was this stupid new reality show called Joe Millionaire, where they got this hot hunk, and they did it's you know The Bachelor. It's that premise. It's like one guy's a bunch of women trying to date him and get to know him, and he'll pick one eventually to go out with as he like eliminates them one by one.
Yeah.
But the twist here is that the reality TV studio lies or fake lies to the women that he's a millionaire. So they're trying to tease out the like classism of the women. But it turns out he's like a poor college dropout at the end. But because they love each other so much, it doesn't matter. The money doesn't matter.
But how do you run a show like this when you're like, oh, I'm going to that show where they lie to you?
Because they record it beforehand with a different name. They don't tell them until it's all.
Isn't this like entrapment?
No, they're voluntarily signing up for a reality show. But
I'm just saying, it seems like this is against basic ethics.
Yeah, but all of reality TV is against basic ethics. That's not the point.
Like, I couldn't do this in the academy, is all I'm saying.
No, because it's not a scientific study.
This is not informed consent, is all I'm saying.
But you're begging the question, which is they know in the first place because it's a whole fucking lie, because it's a scam, because it's reality TV.
Oh, okay. So it is still fraud. Okay, all right. It's just
all
not
reality
the fraud
TV is fraud. But the reason I like this article so much is because this woman on the show, she looked at one of like the boom mic guys, like one of the crew rather, who's got like a vest on, he's got a mask on, and she's like, I think he's cute. What?
Wait, how is it a woman on Joe Millionaire?
What are you missing? There's one man, and there's 15 to 20 women who are all vying for his love and affection.
Oh, and one of the contestants, not the Joe.
What?
Yes.
Is
it the main guy, or is it one of the women who developed these feelings?
Contestants.
One of the women whose job is to fall in love with the guy.
Got it.
Said, nah, fuck him. I like one of his random crew members. I think he's cute.
I just figured he was a contestant too.
And they kicked there's one guy. And they kicked her off the show because, like, you're not fitting with the narrative. You're not falling in love with the right guy.
Well, why couldn't she still play act the narrative while having feelings for someone else?
I guess she was over it. She's like, I want to go date this guy.
Seems harsh.
It's funny. It's like a glitch in the Truman Show where they're like, no, you have to remember when Truman Show starts breaking down because like his wife actually cares and tries to have him escape. It's like that. Like it's the system's falling apart because the woman's not falling in love with the guy who she's supposed to.
How did I get 20 years without hearing of this name, Joe Million?
It was very popular when we were kids. I mean, it's right in the 2000s, like a whole new advancement in reality TV. It kind of birthed the genre.
What did you have in?
Just feels like the title should be Joe Millionaire Contestant Fumbles the Bag. I mean, why? Why? I mean, you could date quietly. Just, go along with the stupid setup that you've agreed to.
I think the twist with this one, though, is there's two guys, and one is rich and one is poor. And the women don't know which one is which.
Oh my god,
that sucks even more.
It's bad. Of course, it's evil. It's TV. But my point is, I just like that this woman was like, "Fuck your system."
Is this Rachel Vinson?
I don't know. Probably.
Because if so, it says quit. It's the only one that wasn't eliminated.
Yeah, they basically fired her.
They're a 30-year-old attorney. Why do they need to marry somebody? She's fine. Anyway,
what's to date the cute crew guy?
I'm just saying, it's more power to her. Why not?
I know. I think it's great. It's. I just like that she bucked the reality TV system. I think that's cool.
Anyway, you go, Rachel.
Hope you find happiness.
Date that cameraman. Or whoever.
Must have been quite the grip.
This from WVBT Virginia, which is like a local radio channel in Virginia. Governor Youngkin, the governor of Virginia,
Oh god.
He hit the fucking triple crown. Signs executive actions. 1, banning critical race theory. 2, appointing a new parole board. 3, ending school mask mandate. And 4, ending vaccine mandate for the state employees.
Do they understand what like the First Amendment is?
He hit the grand slam of conservative swackery.
You can't just like ban thought.
Banned.
I don't even know how you would do that. Like what like Spanish Inquisition shit are they going to cook up to ban people thinking about a thing?
No, they're going to eliminate it from the curriculum.
Yeah, I don't think you can do that at a college level, which is the only place it was even being taught.
No, it's they're trying to teach in high school.
Yeah, they're just
the whole debate is trying to teach this stuff earlier so that people don't go, America's amazing. Then they go to college like, oh god, America's evil.
And because it hasn't happened yet, what they're actually going to do with this happening now is they're just going to say, hey, you can't give students books written by black authors anymore, okay?
I mean, yeah, like that's basically what they're saying. Like this is not a well-defined thing. This is not like, okay, we're banning history. Like they're not banning like a subgenre that is easily identifiable in that way, which they couldn't do anyway, but like it's like a loose collection of vaguely progressive people analyzing our culture and history and country from several different perspectives all over the place.
Not happening.
How do you ban that?
Banned.
What does that even mean? How do you
Canceled.
determine what is CRT?
It's just cover for
Do they talk about slavery? Banned.
It's just saying you can't be a leftist of any kind.
You can't learn real history, correct?
Yeah, like, okay, good luck. You can't actually enforce that.
Coming from Virginia, one of the original and most important states in the entire Union, that has usually been on the left side of most things for much of its history.
Well,
not anymore.
Not the Civil War.
Yeah,
I know, but
it's been completely swallowed by like a deep South ideology.
Maybe I'm thinking 200 years ago. Whatever.
Also, I mean, almost everyone was from that because it was like the biggest early state.
Yeah.
So you got the best and the worst coming out of basically there in Massachusetts.
And not saying their best or their worst.
But yeah, I mean, remember when the Democratic Party was super excited because like Tim Kaine was going to deliver them Virginia forever? And it was going to be like a beacon of like young Vietnamese couples or whatever, and suddenly it's going to turn into a Democratic stronghold. And now it may as well be Alabama. Good work. You did it. Neoliberals, take a bow. You've secured America's future.
Any change is a good change.
Yeah.
Well, according to Business Insider and Mitt Romney, let's hold up and wait a minute. From Business Insider, Senator Mitt Romney says Biden was elected to stop the crazy and argues that voters weren't asking him to transform America. You see, whenever we vote and the new president gets a mandate, Mitt Romney gets to tell us what we were voting for.
Is Mitt Romney like a soothsayer? How does he know any of this?
The underpants.
He's a level 8,000 Mormon.
Is Mitt Romney sitting down and like he's drawing like tarot cards and he's like, it says here, you were not elected to stop the crazy. Huh. I got that wrong. Like, what? You're just making a fucking assertion because you're Republican. Go fuck yourself. Why does everyone like Mitt Romney? Like, I have to ask this because every fucking media person is just loves this prick. This guy was disgusting even compared to Obama. And Obama's a piece of shit. Why are we still talking about him? He failed to achieve the presidency. He's always been a religious crank. He did like one good thing, which was like do centrist healthcare in Massachusetts.
He stood up against Trump, Alex.
Oh, cool. Who gives a shit?
He keeps himself physically presentable and pretended to be Ted Lasso.
I swear to God, if he was ugly, he would not get press.
Oh, that's all.
I don't know. Ted Cruz?
Ted Cruz is he's a big schlub.
Yeah, but Ted Cruz gets press because he's a heel. He gets heel
not because
press.
He's ugly.
No, but Ted Cruz gets coverage because he's a huge cunt. Like, yeah, he gets coverage because people like
that's
the
why
heel
Mitt
role
Romney
too.
gets coverage too.
No, Mitt Romney gets coverage as if he's not a heel.
Well, everything's evil to me, so he's evil.
I mean, that's the correct diagnosis, but yeah,
fuck's sake,
neo-Marxist. Biden was not elected to be a neo-Marxist that he's being. That's basically what our Mormon soothsayer is saying.
I'd like to point out that transforming America is like keeping it from degenerating further in like 2 of 20 places by maybe preventing some of the voter fraud that the Republicans are. intentionally perpetrating across the country, or maybe stopping the filibuster from preventing people from actually nominating Supreme Court justices or whatever. Like, Biden hasn't even succeeded at stopping the bleeding, let alone changing the body. So,
but Alex, haven't you heard the good news? We're going to save the court.
I was giving you a segue. So
this from CNN.
May as well ride in on it.
Justice Stephen Breyer to retire from the Supreme Court, paving way for Biden appointment.
And just like that, Breyer has ascended past Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yep, it wasn't hard. That's how you do it. He was already being a smug son of a bitch about it too, because like early in the series, like, I can't say whether I'll be retiring. Yeah. It's like, all right, well.
Right, because Breyer was the one that all these insane articles like, let's use reverse psychology on him.
Yeah,
but still, the funny thing is, even though he is a smarmy piece of shit, he's by far the most left, or was before the two women.
Yeah, before the other
like,
two. Yeah.
He's the most liberal fucking.
Yes, he is, because he's like a mainstream Democrat. Yeah,
he's like Clinton, and that's impressive.
I know, but every article for the last like year was like, maybe if we have his wife withhold sex, then he'll retire. You know, like it was like every insane tactic they could think of to try to get this guy to just do like the common sense decent thing. So maybe he just got like peer pressure.
Yeah, what do you bet?
Who knows?
What do you bet that like Joe Biden sent him an email like, you stupid son of a bitch, if you don't retire, I'm gonna be mad, Jack.
I'm gonna call you a dumb son of a bitch in public if you don't.
Yeah, I'm not really a fan of Breyer, but I'm certainly glad he made the right choice here.
It's all on a scale.
We're gonna name an ice cream after you, Mac.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of any pseudo-religious unelected that's being in charge of anything. But Breyer was overall a fairly good justice during his time. Better than RBG, as we've
again. The bar is not high because most justices are fucking monsters by our ethical.
But here's the thing. Okay, so you're playing limbo, and the bar is at like 8 feet. So most people should be able to just walk right under it.
Right.
But we consistently have people trying to slam their head on the top.
Yeah, it's Thurgood Marshall. You know, it like set the bar in the first place, and now you've got like every piece of shit like leaping to try to slam their forehead.
Yeah. They all think it's a high jump competition, not a limbo.
Yeah. They're pole vaulting.
Yeah, at least he walked straight through the limbo bar instead of shooting the people holding it.
Yeah.
We're trying to do pull-ups on it. All right.
But I mean, this is obviously a good thing. Is it in time? Probably not, actually, because he's saying he's going to retire at the end of his term. Whatever that means.
No, it won't be before Biden has to get reelected.
It better be really quick, because forget Biden reelected. It better be before the midterm, or else it's going to be, he may not control the Congress to even get a replacement.
Yeah, but even if he does control Congress, he's not going to get a good replacement.
Well, exactly. Well, that's the other problem.
No. Didn't you hear? Biden has promised to elect
be a black woman.
Yeah, choose a black woman.
I fucking despise when they start virtue
don't worry, we got a story on that.
Like that before they've even made the pick. It's like, yes, we know you're virtue signaling. No one is surprised. Stop it.
Ooh, what if they get Stacey Abrams?
What if they get Kamala Harris?
Is that allowed? Can you send someone from the vice president's spot?
God, no.
That would be so funny. Not really funny, but kind of.
Yeah, but you know what's really funny? Gorsuch. This is from MSNBC. Gorsuch derides the so-called separation of church and state.
Oh my God. But the court isn't filled with partisan hacks.
What's that called again? Where people like, we only read the Constitution, the only thing that matters. What's that called again?
I mean, there's a lot of terms, but
textualism.
Yeah, because I'm sure you guys know the actual detail, but like the separation of church and state is so well established, it's laughable. I mean, it's fucking pre-constitutional and post-constitutional. Like, it is so baked into the identity of this country that Gorsuch can just deride it and laugh it off as some like fucking tacked on thing in the 60s is one of the most infuriating things I've read this week.
You can gore suck my nuts.
Yeah. I mean, this is something that the founders got from the Enlightenment, which was brewing out of essentially hundreds of years already of philosophy and contemporary political thinkers. You've got, the Voltaires and the Montesquieux and the sort of late Renaissance and Enlightenment thought at that time. This has absolutely nothing to do with modernity, actually. Like, this comes from a period in European history in which Protestants and Catholics were butchering each other, and the thinkers at the time said, what if we didn't do that? And in order to not do that, you can't have an official state religion, or else you're going to keep fighting over which it is. So you have John Locke, who's even like basically a reactionary, and even he understood, as is well documented in the letter concerning toleration, that the only way to make conservatives stop butchering each other is to stop deciding who's king conservative and just let everyone be their thing. He's literally deriding the heritage of Western civilization, which he supposedly cherishes. It's completely insane. Like toleration, like via separation of church and state, is a core Western philosophical canon value.
You know how all these people are trying to say, no, Jefferson's great. He's one of the most important founding fathers. Yeah, this was Jefferson's fucking baby.
Yes. Oh. This is like the foundation of modern liberalism, which includes conservatism. Correct. Like in an international context, right? Liberalism means what it actually means, which is like the capital order of modernity. Pluralistic religious identities living in a multicultural society with no official state religion is the foundation of a modern nation-state capitalist order. This is like the basis upon which his entire power rests. If you have an official state religion, then you slide back into monarchies and theocracies, and it stops having rule of law in the way that he needs to be relevant.
No, we're done with that. We moved on. We're done. Next phase.
It's just completely insane. He's like undermining in the name of the Western philosophical canon, he's undermining the entire principle of it. Like, it's so stupid.
Yeah, but as we found out from recent weeks, he's not only unprincipled, he's also a petty cunt.
Well, yes, that's also true.
Where's this from? Yahoo. I'll let you continue. It goes along with this.
No, go ahead. I mean, I could rant about philosophy for a long time. It's not that interesting.
From Yahoo, Neil Gorsuch defied a request from Chief Justice Roberts to wear a mask out of respect for Sonia Sotomayor, who, even though she's double vaxxed and boosted, and she wears a mask, she's old, she's like diabetes or something, has fairly compromised immune system. And Gorsuch is like, nah.
Also, you're not that fucking spring a chicken either, Gorsuch. You're really playing with fire.
Oh, that would be fucking cosmic justice.
None of these people are young. Like, let's get real. The dude's still in his 50s. He's not like immune.
Yeah, but he's in pretty good shape for an old guy.
It doesn't matter. There's people in like their 30s dying. Anyway.
Yeah, but he's got infinite healthcare.
It's just
Yeah, well, what a petty cunt.
I can't.
So they've been doing Supreme Court hearings, and everyone's there, and then fucking Sotomayor's on like a screen that they brought in. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's the only rational thing to do when your coworkers are complete imbecile.
All right. Well, speaking of picking a black woman to be the next Supreme Court justice when Breyer steps down, this also from Business Insider. As one of only 2 black women CEOs in the Fortune 500, I'm often asked about how to close the U.S.'s racial wealth gap. The key is helping people save for retirement. Thoughts on someone who has totally drank the Kool-Aid?
How do they save for retirement? How do they do that?
I will tell you, Alex. When I find the article.
We pay them a lot more, a fair amount, but we don't give them that money until they're 70 years old.
Because again, you can only save for retirement when your needs are met and when you don't have debt. So in order to save for retirement, you need to be making a living wage.
Oh, here's the rich one. She says it's up to policymakers and leaders to build more educational and employment opportunities for people of color. Not her, not the CEO of a financial...
You're CEO! Are you not a leader? That's like the definition of your job title.
Not up to her, Alex. It's up to policymakers and leaders. Leaders. It's up to Jake Paul to solve the UFC's financial pay system. It's up to Gorsuch to decide black people get money. It's up to Mitch McConnell to pull cash out of his ass.
So is the conclusion I'm supposed to draw, based on what you've just told me and the headline, that the problem right now is that people of color are too uneducated and stupid to know how to effectively save their money?
They're bad with money. Unlike her, she runs TIAA, a big financial company.
Seems like what I'm supposed to draw from this.
Yes, absolutely. That is definitely the implication. Because if poverty is the poor's fault, then they're fucked, and that's their problem.
Yeah, if only the state had given them more opportunities for education, not certainly capital, which has every opportunity cut them off at the knees.
If only we further bloated a job market that doesn't exist for the jobs that they would then get with those educations that they then go into crushing debt for. That would solve everyone's problem.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how bad PR speak is this? Quote, I believe that public policymakers and corporate leaders can work together to be the change.
To be the change?
Be the change.
Conjugate your verbs, lady.
Be the change, Alex.
Yeah,
To be agents of change.
Conceive, believe, achieve.
That's like the Gal Gadot celebrity singing Imagine level.
Right. Yeah, she was trying to be the change. Why'd everyone hate on her?
This is handing the cop the Pepsi. That's what this is.
Just be the change. Just do it. Just be it.
What if we could just empathize with the police? It's just, I'm like, really, these people who are like, again, 2 in 500, so they obviously know they are the extreme minority, even within an extreme minority. What the fuck do they even think they have to say? Here's what the only logical thing they should say is, you're fucked. It doesn't happen. It's 2 in 500.
But
it's not going to happen.
What I think it would be baller for Biden to read this article, like, damn, Jack, and pick her to be the next Supreme Court justice. Because even though she is, once again, fits the demographic, you know what she's not in the majority or not in the minority? Her beliefs, her ideology, her worldview, her belief about what America owes the rest of the world, about what people in charge owe the people at the bottom. She is bought in hook, line, and sinker. She believes the exact same thing that the other 498 non-black women believe, who run the major companies of the country.
I'm more likely to die from COVID than become a black woman CEO in the Fortune 500.
If black women relative to the U.S. population were represented in CEOs, there would be more than 30 black female CEOs in the Fortune 500. The fact that there are 2 tells you everything you need to know. She doesn't even have to open her mouth. It's not happening.
I have some phrenology to explain that.
I am so mad that Mike Tomlin is the only current black NFL coach. Very upsetting. Should be like 15 or 16 or 17 coaches.
If you want to know why the U.S., I mean, some of it's just like religious insanity, but like if you want to know why the U.S. is so in love with con artists and like fraudsters and NFTs and scams and schemes, it's because when you talk literally, you get depressed because it's fuck. Because if this woman was honest, it would just be no, a tiny elite will manage to, by random chance and inheritance, escape poverty. The rest are fucked, especially if they're in an intersectional problem like being a minority or a woman. Yeah, but you can't say that, right?
Yeah, you know those things, as despicable as they usually are about working through loopholes and undercutting the system. And if you play by the rules of the system, then you get fucked. So yeah, exactly. It's like it's a desperate grasp onto some small signaling towards a possibility of success, as despicable as it is, and as much as it takes advantage of poor and desperate people, and in the cases of con artists, etc. But at least someone's making it out.
Work outside the system. Consider the needs of women and your lower employees. Well, from CNN Business, Microsoft to acquire Activision Blizzard in record $68.7 billion deal. You know, Activision Blizzard, the company run by essentially a sexual assault monster who covered it all up, and the company that is in the midst of like its worst PR nightmare ever.
I'm assuming purging that guy and similar is part of the deal.
No. Kotick is not out until another year after the deal is finalized, if he can't solve the issues.
What the fuck?
But he is the issue!
I saw...
Be the change!
Blizzard announced like a new survival game, and I saw some post about how it's just being a female employee working at Blizzard.
Yeah, exactly.
Or just being in the games industry at all.
Yeah, seriously.
So
psychological horror.
But I thought Microsoft was an industry leader and it was going to be the change. Nah, they spent the most money ever on a fucking probably illegal to the degree of like monopolistic corporate merger with the largest, most evil video game company.
Well, maybe be the change. They just interpret it as nickel and dime you on DLC.
Be a change. Yeah, they're rife for an antitrust lawsuit at this point. I don't really play.
I'm amazed this was even allowed to go through
any Activision Blizzard games, so I don't like have much of a feeling from like a gamer perspective. But I certainly think it's gross from like a monopoly perspective, and of course,
Blizzard. The only positive thing about this is that eventually, once it's done, Phil Spector will be in charge, and he's actually a pretty smart guy. He'll have more power than Bobby Kotick.
I hate that I need to know who these people are to decide whether I'm making a moral hazard when I play a video game.
Phil Spector was the head of Xbox. He's a pretty well-liked guy in the industry. The Then again, he has agreed on a merger with one of the most evil companies in America. So,
like, if I buy a diamond ring, I know I'm probably contributing to like limb severance in Africa. If I'm playing a video game, I shouldn't be like, how many people got raped to produce this game? That just shouldn't be a thing I have to think about.
You know what? They should be forced to put it in the credits. You know, it's like, game babies and like people who died during the make. Like, how many people got assaulted during the creation of this video game?
Fuck's sake.
How many lawsuits were filed during the publishing of this video game?
It's so sick. Like, they're not even pretending there's consequences. They're just saying there's going to be consequences if in a year people still remember what you did.
Exactly.
Basically.
Once we're done kicking this can down the road, if people still care, you're gone.
Giving Kotick a extremely generous severance package was such an easy thing to do. But no, they couldn't even do that. They're just like, hey, yeah, you stay on. We'll give you some time to solve the problem that you are one of the main contributors to.
All right, we are quickly approaching escape velocity from sanity.
We are approaching that now.
Yes, from CNBC.
I am currently suffocating in 0G.
So CNBC. We're in the scene where in Interstellar where he's trying to line up the hatch lock thing, and he's like, everyone's passing out.
I'm sending messages in sand to you about how insane I'm going.
Yeah, in the Tesseract.
Yeah.
From CNBC, Kevin O'Leary reacts to a 29-year-old USPS worker, United States Postal Service, who made over $90,000 last year. Quote, he's done a great job in his budget. So how, you might ask, does this 29-year-old...
Who's Kevin O'Leary?
Oh,
you don't know who Kevin O'Leary is?
Mr.
No.
Wonderful.
Oh my God, let me post a picture. Just
10 words. Who's Kevin O'Leary?
And you do that while I find a picture.
He is a quote-unquote entrepreneur and businessman, most well-known at this point for being on Shark Tank.
Okay.
He's one of the Shark Tank scumbags. Okay. But he's also like one of the most hideous, vile men in the world.
The American one or the British stuff? Like
the American one, but he is not American, I don't think.
Okay. I think he was on Dragon's Den as well.
Okay, I recognize him. I just didn't remember his name.
I think he's Canadian.
Yeah, he's an absolute piece of shit, as you would expect. But
yeah, I remember. Yeah, he's a piece of shit.
And he's like, you know what? I love this kid's grind. So how does this USPS worker make this much money? He does like 8 shifts of overtime and extra, 1.5 times pay by working every day of the week. He works overtime every day. He spends literally no money. He lives in like a shack. He doesn't go to movies. He doesn't eat out. He just gets like lunch on the job, and he works himself to death.
Rich people talk about poor people as if they are studying insects they've pinned to a board.
Yeah, they're doing the fly experiment.
They're very interesting. Their reproductive strategy seems to have panned out this season. Like, these are human beings with minds as complex and interesting as your own, if not probably much more if you're this fucker. You talking about them like it's a fucking natural experiment as this person suffers and dies to make a tiny bit more money to survive under those conditions is insane. $90,000 means nothing to this person. He's talking about it like it's another species. Yeah. Okay. To talk about this as if this is virtuous is also sick, because this is absolutely not something that people should be doing. Like, let me cause serious psychological and physical trauma to myself in order to make a small amount of fucking change.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is this illegal? Quote, as a mail carrier for the USPS, 29-year-old typically works 12 to 13 hours a day, 6 days a week. During business week, he works about 5 hours of overtime each day and takes on even more on the weekends. Isn't that a crime?
Probably.
He works for the USPS. He has government employee rights. Like, he's not an at-will employee. He can't...
Yeah, but he might be arguing that he wants to do it.
They're not supposed to let you do that.
No, they're not.
He lives in Memphis, Tennessee. His base salary is only $41,000.
I wonder if he has a union rep.
But with overtime, he's able to bring in double with 90. According to O'Leary, his work ethic is especially impressive.
Because I opened the article and the line that
this guy knows how to work hard.
Overall, O'Leary gives Myers a 9.5 out of 10. Fuck off,
bruh.
It's not a horse. Again, it's turning people who are not like super rich into objects of like fascinated study as if we're on safari. It's just.
And I just want to say, this is not some guy who lives on his own, who's just like working because he loves it or because it's fun. He has a kid. He's a young black man.
I was going to say, the racial element is also sick. Because this is like an old white man analyzing the performance of a young black
Right, this
man
is
with a
fucking
child.
Mandingo shit.
Yeah, it really starts turning into fucking Django Unchained real quick when you start thinking about that. Oh, his work ethic is really good. Look at the amount of cotton that has been acquired by this quarter. What's the fucking difference between a literal slave master and a figurative slave master? And at this point, he's doing the fucking thing from the other day. We're talking about the work ethic, like the process of work ethic destroying our brains, of thinking that this is like a virtuous thing to be doing to yourself. And like an 80-hour work week.
How much you want to bet by having Kevin O'Leary, a giant financial celebrity, and CNBC covering this story, this somehow fucks up his job? Or somehow fucks up his life with the added media attention, the added scrutiny. I'm sure people are going to be checking his Twitter. I'm sure his employers are going to be double checking his timesheets. Like, this is not good. It's bad by every measure. Not just the story itself, but the covering of the story itself. It's all disgusting. It's disgusting all the way down, from tip to butt.
Again, this is someone who is doing way more than most people even could, and way more than he can for more than a few years, most likely. This is not sustainable. This is not a thing you could do endlessly.
He's not netting 90 a year. He's grossing 90 a year.
Yeah.
A lot of that's gone in taxes.
Burning yourself out on multiple dimensions to do this is not something that should, quote, this guy's a fantastic role model, be something to say. Like, it's just not that.
He's not working at an office. He's walking and moving. This is like insane amounts of cardio exercise.
It's talking about the guy who like dragged a cross across the country twice and being like, this is a fantastic role model. Look at the cardio.
All the people who do their own crucifixion shit that they've obsessed with. Yeah,
I mean, I guess he is a role model in that he's willing to work. He's willing to literally kill himself to provide for himself and his family. But yeah, it's once again just honing down onto the smallest, most microscopic individual level to completely ignore how unfair, unjust, and cruel it is that he has to do this in the first place.
Here's my role model, John Henry. Everyone should work themselves to death trying to defeat a train. It's like, okay. Like,
here's my role model, the guy from fucking Atlas Shrugged or whatever, Fountainhead.
You cannot put on a pedestal the like top 0.01% of energy or effort expended on something that some exceptional individual does and go like, everyone should be doing this. The vast majority of people could not do this, and no one should do this. It's like saying, okay, I'm working, I'm studying for my exams 15 hours a day and sleeping for 4 because I care that much. It's like, no, it's actually harmful to you. Probably do worse. You're recommending that someone engages in something that's not healthy for their body or mind. So saying that that's in any way desirable is actually very bad. This is not admirable in any way.
Right. It's a scalable solution to fitness in America. Everyone become a marathon runner.
Right. It's not a normal thing. In fact, most people are actually less healthy after they do marathons.
In fact, there's the tie back into Jocko and Joe Rogan. Their fucking best friend, like this crazy guy Goggins. He's an ultra marathon runner. He runs 100 miles. He runs like 20 miles a day.
Yeah.
People are out of their gourd. Like, this is a solution for living a good, upstanding, pleasurable life. No, it's not. No, it's not. Sorry.
Not good, folks.
And this is even besides the fact that how the fuck the other workers going to feel when their boss is like, hey, he's doing 80 a week.
Yeah, this motherfucker is killing union efforts and outpacing his workers by double.
Making it seem as though everyone else is somehow slacking when they're actually already overworked, even their regular fucking 40 hours a week.
He being Kevin O'Leary mainly.
Yes, because he's the one advertising this.
Yeah, exactly.
But
which is the goal. The goal.
Any manager who sees this and is like, I guess I could crank another 5 hours of overtime out of these people. They've been slacking. It's like, no, you work 10 hours a week, like yelling at people. Shut the fuck up. Like, but that's what we're dealing with here. It's people giving each other excuses to be shitty to the poor once again, and try to demand more work of them than they should reasonably be able to ask. Also, what's the last 0.5? What else could this fucking guy possibly be doing that is not being done with an 80-hour work week?
Be not black.
He's spending money.
Well, probably.
Or maybe spending money on his kid. He should just give that fuck up for adoption.
Having a kid, that's like $1 million.
He should bring him with his shift.
Having a kid, that's $1 million down the drain. Bad financial investment.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, we've got one more.
Yeah.
We'll see if we achieve nirvana. This from Axios. America's youth turn left.
Yeah.
And here is their evidence.
This strange podcast by three guys.
They finally overcome the Zoolander challenge.
Would someone like to look at this graph that they have as the very front of the article?
Probably not, but I will.
What the actual fuck is going on with this graph? This is horribly presented.
Did you know that 18 to 29-year-olds are voting Democrat more than they're voting Republican? We're turning left. Finally.
And it's not even as great as the march in 2008. And that Joe Biden's now left.
Folks, we've done it. Gen Zers are leftists.
Known leftist Kamala Harris and Joe Biden.
America's youth, more and more, wants to eat moldy bread over literal shit.
Oh, but our turnout is getting higher. It's almost at 53% amongst this population.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, this is not...
Which is abysmal.
Like, this is not wrong. Like, America's youth is turning left, but this is a horrible way of explaining or evidencing that. I mean, yeah, like, we have some of the highest rates of support for basically, like, social democratic policies in generations, but this is a graph of people who voted for Joe Biden. So what? Like, what?
So this article is consulting with this person, Della Volpe. I don't know who that is. I don't know why that's relevant or why their name is weird.
They have Fox?
But here are they say, this person, Della Volpe, says there are 5 elements that shaped this rising voting bloc. 1, Occupy Wall Street. 2, Donald Trump. 3, the Parkland shooting.
What?
4, the chick who recorded the George Floyd murder. And 5, Greta Thunberg yelling about climate. Apparently, those are the big 5 as to why we're all leftists now.
Wait, why is she talking about
Wall Street?
Okay, why are they talking about the woman who recorded the video and not the video?
Apparently, 17-year-old Darnella Frazier and her use of her iPhone to record the murder of George Floyd, that was the important thing, not the cop being a murderer.
Well, no, but like, isn't the content of the video a little more important than the messenger?
No.
I'm just the messenger, Alex. I'm just reading what their shit they're saying.
But apparently, the messenger is the important thing.
Well, she was young, so she'd have the fact.
Like she's in the block now.
I would also turn left if I was 17 and I watched police murder people. Seems like a pretty normal thing to do at that point.
If you're 18, how old were you when Occupy happened? 5?
8, 7.
Well, Occupy was big in like 2008 to 2012. Yeah. So at the absolute latest, you'd be like 8.
Which I like, despite the good energy behind it, so to speak, I remember as one of the most ineffectual movements in modern history.
That got utterly crushed by its foes. Like,
I mean, ideologically, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but yeah, it did not succeed.
Yes,
it was crushed by police. It was crushed by lawyers. It was crushed by, the state. It was crushed by everyone. It was crushed by reactionary, agent provocateurs. It was crushed by being decentralized out of just New York City. Everywhere it tried to spread, it got crushed. Like, it was an immense, not failure in its goals, but a failure in its actual changes to action of holding people accountable. Like,
yeah, it was a kind of a much less dramatic, like a beer hall putsch. Of the love. Like, it was an attempt to organize a more radical left sentiment than could really be vocalized openly without being destroyed by the state.
Students fighting for this
destroyed by the state. Like,
yeah. Students fighting for this kind of stuff in the 60s, it actually worked. The state didn't figure out how to kill it better.
Yeah. Occupy Wall Street was so effectively hollowed out by media.
Right, and just like throwing hippies in there and super crunchy rolls, what madness. And then also, the Donald. All about him, isn't it?
The Occupy Wall Street thing was important in the sense that it was really the beginning of a sort of modern transition away from simply anti-war sentiments, like recognizing economic injustice in our current like class-based moment. You don't really have like a Sanders run in 2016 without the pre-existing frustrations of the failure of the Occupy Wall Street to go anywhere. But still, yeah, I mean, I participated in an Occupy protest when I was down at U Maryland, and it just
in grad school,
in grad school, but it did not go anywhere because I was literally the only non-student who participated. Because I mean, technically I was a student as a grad student, but I was the only one who wasn't undergrad.
Sure.
Everyone else was like, there were like 70, 80 people who were interested in it, even in like just one meeting, which is pretty good for one meeting. Started ad hoc, and the school basically told us, get off our lawn.
You know, this lawn that you all pay for to be on.
Yeah, and they sent like the mall cops to scare us off, and none of the other fucking teachers wanted to put their neck out or risk any of their salary by participating in what was considered even like a vaguely radical thing. And so everyone just kind of like disbanded and like, well, what are we going to do?
All those leftist teachers in college.
Now, like, is that a kind of limp dick response to a serious crisis? It is, but like, what do you want people to do? They have to go back to fucking studying and doing their jobs. Like, the problem is when you don't have more permanent or serious like left-wing institutions that can build power or community organize over time as opposed to just in reaction in a moment. Yeah, it feels ephemeral and it gets crushed easily because you just don't have the resilience to keep fighting it out for long periods of time.
Yeah, because because I think when you grasp onto the philosophy of basic like class consciousness about the systemic nature and sources of economic inequality, like that's enough fire kind of in your heart to organize demonstrations and like this. But in doing so, you're basically pitting yourself against an extremely organized, state-backed
machine of finance and evil,
with strategy
and war and violence,
militant support and support structures for crushing you. And you need to have the same. And most people aren't prepared for that because it takes an immense amount of willpower, work, and organization to be prepared to combat that and to weather the horrifically violent storm that you'll eventually face if you hold your ground.
And you're basically outing yourself and making yourself a target.
Yeah, you'll just get bulldozed like the many stories we've covered.
And one of the most common strategies for the state and for capital to crush these kinds of events is to simply create enough like disincentives to be present through various basically harassment and torture that people get driven away, and then they just round up the like 10% who are the diehards who stayed and arrest them. So if you stay, then you kind of mark yourself as a victim. And if you leave, then obviously they've succeeded anyway. So they kind of use collective action problems where people don't know whether they should stay or not, despite harassment and police brutality and everything, to break up these protests, even though they initially seem like they have thousands of people. Yep. So yeah, I mean, what you basically have to do to organize is to literally organize. You have to collectively agree that you're not going to walk off. You have to collectively agree that you're going to weather harassment. And it's hard to do that when you're just kind of an ad hoc movement that forms together naturally.
Yep.
Anyway, yeah, there's lots of reasons we're turning left. I mean, I don't know if I could pretend to be.
Right, I just think it's funny that they grabbed all those events and linked them together. I don't think the fucking Parkland shooting affected. Well, I mean, once again, I fall into this demographic. That didn't change my politics at all. My politics have been well established by all the hundreds of years of evidence and data beforehand.
Well, you didn't need to turn left.
Parkland changed my mind. What?
You didn't need to turn left because you were left.
I can't say that any school shooting affected my outlook on.
And we're all very close to Sandy Hook.
Yeah,
relatively speaking.
15 minutes.
I mean, it definitely reinforced a suspicion of the gun culture prevalence that we have in this country, as opposed to some leftists in some countries and regions that are like, we should have more guns because they want to be ready for like the armed revolution. But I don't think it affected whether or not I am a leftist in the first place.
I mean, Columbine was what, 1999?
Or earlier, right?
Remember when you could name one and be like, remember that one?
Yeah.
And it's not like every week there's another one. Yeah, that was a nice time. When we thought it was just like goth kids listening to Marilyn Manson and that's why school shootings were going to happen.
And this article feels like kind of one, just like it has to fall into the kind of listicle format and like boil things down to a few bullet points because that's what half of articles need to be now. But it also just feels like they're trying to elide the fact that the current generation senses that society is collapsing and that they need to do something about it, or else they'll literally die.
Well, this has been an interesting mixture of ideas. This is going to be a little longer an episode, folks. We're going to come back.
Sarah Palin got COVID. Last bit of good news.
Yeah. We're going to come back in a little bit with a discussion of a film, just to give you a little more culture zone. See you in a bit. And we're back with our film analysis portion of the podcast. This week we watched the, 2012
Correct?
film Judge Dredd.
The sci-fi action film based on the very well-known 2000 AD British comic with the titular character Judge Dredd.
Yeah, this one was Jason's suggestion, but we all saw it. We all have our thoughts. Who wants to jump on?
Well, I just like to say I love the film. I've loved it ever since I first saw it. I love the style. I love the acting. I love the premise. I'm really into kind of grim, dark, near future sci-fi. It just kind of hit all the right buttons for me. I like the predictive skills and nature of the comic itself. I think it's a fairly accurate near future representation of what happens if you have nuclear war. There's still going to be humanity left to pick up the pieces. And it will almost inevitably lead to fascism and barbarism because socialism is too hard, apparently. What are you thinking, Aiden?
I want to ask you, since you did suggest this one, was it just because like it clearly has some fodder for political discussion and you enjoy it a lot, or was there a different, like a larger reason for discussion that you chose it?
No, I just think it's an intrinsically political film.
Yeah.
And I like the world, I like the setting, and the podcast known as Cumtown did a really good riff on it once. But it's a great film. I mean, I don't know. I like Carl Urban. I like his commitment to doing very few. He does very few films. He's very selective. He did a really good job representing this character, literally never taking off his helmet, because that never happens in the comics. Unlike the very famous 1990s Stallone version, where it just became a giant ego piece for him. I don't know. It's the action's okay, but it reminds me of like a classic 1980s B movie, B action movie, which is what they're kind of trying to replicate, but with modern day aesthetic and CGI and actors. And I don't know. I enjoy it. It to me, it strikes the perfect balance of just what an action movie should be. It's not too smart. It's not trying to outthink you. It's not trying to trick you. It's got a couple little moments, little twists, little fun things. And it's just a nice, it's just a nice roller coaster ride. And I like that.
From a film perspective, to me, it feels like the kind of like the love child of like a Quentin Tarantino, Guy Ritchie fusion with maybe a bit of like Zack Snyder special effects mixed into it to make the perfect 2012 action movie potion. But it I also enjoyed it, but kind of I think I enjoyed it because I also really enjoy kind of this like not super sci-fi, like near apocalypse kind of setting or dystopian setting. But watching it with like this podcast in mind, it does kind of feel like a fascist's dream kind of action movie, because Dredd is like it kind of projects and predicts or proposes a near future where the natural response to collapse is that all of humanity devolves into crime, or at least enough devolves into crime to gain control. And so only like a extremely violent, almost extrajudicial, I mean, it is judicial because that's how the system is set up, but extremely murderous police force is the only answer to rein it in. But then it also layers on this idea, like this quote unquote nuance of, well, there are going to be bad people in there, but the good cop can overcome them. And he's the good cop because he adheres to the already unfair strictures of just murdering people if they're too much trouble. And I think that kind of adds like the wrinkle of like trying to make him seem like the good guy, even though up until that point he's pretty clearly in the gray. But overall, I will say I still enjoy it. I think it's a really fun movie. There's a lot of visual fodder that's enjoyable.
Great one-liners.
Yeah. I'm also very impressed how long Carl Urban can hold a frown. I don't think I could do that.
It's the greatest scowl ever put to film.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny the list of people you were saying you thought this reminded you of. Like, I found this to be such a subdued action film compared to a lot of the ones that I'm familiar with. There was not really that like there were a lot of explosions, There's a lot of gunfire.
Yeah,
but,
it's
like,
got the blood and violence of Tarantino.
It felt very kind of methodical and calm. It was almost like, all right, next scene, I'm going to shoot up some guys. Like it didn't have like the tension or the explosiveness that I was kind of expecting, considering how insane the comic of it is, and the either pro or anti-fascist, depending on who's directing it, I imagine, premise of this hyper violent, ultra reactionary cop who's blasting his way through a ruined apocalypse. But yeah, I mean, I liked the performance of the leads. I thought it was a competently put together film. I I don't know enough about the people who made it to like speak to their intentions, but from the experience watching the film, you get the sense that Dredd is obviously very different from us. Like his purely like lawful, everything is just by the books philosophy is alien to most normal humans because it's almost like mechanical. It's kind of RoboCop style justice. But he kind of softens even that over the course of the film with his renegade mutant rookie assistant. So like it kind of shows that even he's willing to sort of bend the rules to a degree once he thinks it's convenient. So there's like a softer edge to Dredd for some reason.
Oh,
I
right.
don't know.
That reminded me, Alex. I was checking the wiki just to remind myself who made the film. It's produced by Alex Garland, and if people might be familiar with that name, he's the guy who wrote 28 Days Later.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a more similar comparison. Yeah, I can totally see that.
He wrote and produced this, and he directed and wrote Ex Machina. And the guy is kind of robotic in his writing.
He is very much a mechanical man.
He made Annihilation, which I thought was great, and we could probably talk about at some point. It's written by someone who is incredibly smart, but as you say, the film kind of goes out of its way to not really judge the world that it's presenting you.
Yeah,
they're just showing you from an eagle's eyes view. Here's what he would do in his universe.
You're just there, and I mean, Dredd and his partner are clearly protagonists, and Lena Headey and her gang are clearly psychotically evil,
and yet they do about the same amount of violence.
I don't think the film in any way sympathizes Headey. I was actually expecting them to, because they start her off as like, oh, she was an abused and violently mutilated prostitute.
No, she's reprehensible.
But she's like a horrifically psychopathic character who has almost zero like pet the dog moments throughout the entire film, if she has any. I couldn't recall even a single one. That wasn't just her being a complete psycho. So I think they were trying to give Dredd not so much like a better ethic, because he doesn't have it. He's just like a fascist psycho. However, she's so evil that in that context, you're like, okay, I guess I'm pro Dredd.
And also, to be fair, half the judges who are displayed on screen are bad, corrupt killers.
Yeah.
Two are neutral because we never really see them do anything other than just be feckless and let the building stay locked down. Two of them are cool with Anderson and Dredd, but for very different reasons because they're way more developed characters.
Yeah.
And then 4 are corrupt judges who are willing to take millions of dollars from a psychopathic drug dealing killer to kill one of their own.
Well, what if Serpico became the Punisher? Like, what if instead of just getting killed by corrupt cops or horribly injured, he responded by blowing them away?
Well, see, this is why I want to get into a discussion about how much you guys know about the actual comic and the universe and how long it's been going, because Dredd is the main character, and Anderson's also a very important character, but like very much of the full story is him dealing with corruption and killing other judges and fighting other judges and like fighting interdimensional judges and crazy evil magic shit.
So he's like more of a Punisher character in that.
Yes, but he is seen as a guy who is, Alex and I were talking about this yesterday. Like, he's like Batman, where Joker's like, you're incorruptible, and Batman doesn't really make any sense. He's just like a rich asshole. But Dredd is incorruptible. He is so psychologically, fanatically, ideologically committed to law and order that he won't kill people who are doing drug shooting Uzis at him because they haven't killed anyone else yet. He'll tell a guy, a vagrant, to leave, and he'll give him ISO cubes if he doesn't. He gives like minor leniency, but he's so committed to the letter of the law that it often like prevents him from. It's like people yell at Batman for not killing Joker because like how much violence he'll do down the road. Just deal with it now. And Batman's like, no, I'm a loser. Whereas Dredd's kind of like, it's not important enough. He's like a prioritizing target thing.
Well, there's also there's like no humanity to it, because usually we think of, at least those of us who have any kind of like non-black pilled identity, would say, okay, we enforce laws to try to protect people to some degree, like that we have a justification for law, which is the betterment of humanity, or at least the people of a single country that has those laws. And it's just not the case here, because the reality is Dredd is enforcing the law because it's the law. He doesn't give a shit. And he watches that homeless guy who he was about to cite and like put him in some sort of cube for being homeless. He watches his head get crushed like a watermelon. It's just like, all right. Like, he doesn't care. It doesn't mean anything to him. He doesn't actually give a shit about any of the horrific shit he sees. The only thing that matters is enforcing the law. And I think, to the degree that I think that this was originally an anti-fascist parody of fascism, his total callous disregard for any actual human life or stakes reveals the meaninglessness of law for its own sake.
Right. Dredd is not a contributor and a member of the society and the city and the civilization. He is explicitly above it. He is there to. He's not a man, a father, a husband, a cop. He is a judge, and then there's everyone else below that.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to me also because this film, this depiction of Dredd is pretty clearly a tribute to the film The Raid.
I'm gonna argue with that there.
Really? Go. I mean, it's almost exactly the same format in terms of being an action-centric film, all based within an apartment block.
Yes. The problem with that, and one, it kind of killed the marketing and killed the audience for the movie when it came out, because it came out very recently after Raid.
Yeah.
But both movies were filmed at the same time, totally unaware of each other. It's just that post-production...
It's just convergent evolution.
Yes. Post-production on this film took a lot longer because they were having budgetary constraints. They filmed it for 3D because they thought that would be good marketing for it, and that caused other problems. So they didn't have knowledge of the Raid beforehand. It just happened to come out and be a similar premise, and a lot of people said, just go watch the Raid, it's better.
Which is interesting because the Raid is a foreign film. I'm surprised that had that influence. But also, I didn't realize the Raid was 2011, so that's only a year before.
Yeah.
So
They were
actually filmed at the same time, so there's no way to know that. Yeah.
But I mean, certainly it is all a throwback to early budget action films you can film in like your grandma's basement. Even the set for this, you can go watch like the DVD features on YouTube. A lot of them have put up, like the way they constructed the mega block. Mm-hmm. They basically constructed 3 floors of one corner and then digitally recreated the other 3 quarters of it and then scaled it up and down. It's a really fascinating technological process that got involved. The way they displayed the kind of all of Mega City, where they took real shots of cities and then digitally expanded it. Sure. It's actually kind of similar to the way they filmed the Joker movie in 2019, where like they took real shots of New York and then like digitally messed with it to look like it's the 70s. Like there's some really cool tech involved. There's some really cool world building involved. And there's there certainly is some homage.
The other reason I brought it up, even beyond kind of just before I knew how contemporaneous they were, is that one puts on this patina of near future sci-fi, whereas the other one with a similar premise it makes no such attempt at distancing it from the present.
No, it's here and now, and it's called drug dealers. Yeah.
And I'm kind of curious about like whether you think that it being sci-fi is really relevant. Does that change the tenor or the message or the flavor of it in any meaningful way, besides being able to do things like heat shot or hot shot?
For me, it does, but I'd be curious what Alex thinks.
Well, before we even get to that, I was going to say that we were coming into this with the assumption that like, the Raid outperformed Dredd, because that's like what we were saying, but that's actually false. The Raid made $9.3 million and Dredd made $41 million.
Oh yeah, of course, because one's a Hollywood film, one's an Indonesian film.
But what I'm getting to, and the reason I bring it up, is what made a difference was how low the budget was for the film. The original Raid film was only like $1 million to make, whereas the Dredd one was anywhere between 30 and 45 million that disclosed. So basically, it barely broke even though it was 5 times the exposure in terms of actual ticket sales. So the reason why you do a film in one building when you have $1 million to make a film is that is the cheapest possible set you can use. It's like doing a stage play. You're saying we're going to take a rundown apartment building. We're going to make our entire film just running up and down the stairs through the various rooms of that apartment building. So one of the reasons why you might have convergent evolution in this case is because you have, how do you make a film with $1 million in Indonesia, and it's use an apartment building? And then you have Dredd, which is every single thing in this futuristic society takes place in huge mega blocks. So it's I don't actually think it has anything to do with them ripping each other off. because that we've already kind of established that couldn't be the case.
It's just guerrilla filmmaking.
It's just guerrilla filmmaking versus sticking to a post-apocalyptic universe where everything's in a mega tower, which gets into your sci-fi element. Why that's the case?
Yeah. Now, I do think the sci-fi element matters because it's not trying to be as gritty and real and modern as like The Raid. It's not like any of the million modern cop movies and cop dramas that are trying to emulate and show back to you what real life is supposed to look like according to them. Because it's futuristic and because it's predictive and because there's a lot of nods and winks about it being very bad and cynical and satirical and derisive. Like when he shoots fucking white phosphorus, that is not the most, silenced dog whistle. It's trying to say, do not let this happen. The foundational incident in the whole Dredd universe is we elect a president who starts a nuclear war with the rest of the world. Like, this is pulling from 1960s fears about, the Cold War, about nuclear annihilation. These are these are objectively bad things that pretty much everyone even then could agree it would be pretty good if the world was not to be nuked. So it's pulling on that. It's saying, it's like Mad Max. I don't think Mad Max is really making many political statements because it's so destroyed. There's nothing left. But it's like, there's going to be survivors. There's going to be people. People are going to have to pick up the pieces again. It's kind of like the video game I've been playing recently, playing Horizon Zero Dawn. Like, there's going to be survivors, even if you destroy the world. How do they manage? How do they make do? How do they rebuild? And in this universe, they rebuild explicitly fascistly.
Or they don't rebuild at all because there's 96% unemployment. Like, part of the humor of it is that there's literally a failed state, but he's still trying to administer law.
Yeah.
There is no law. Everything's fucked. Like, they're in an environment where there's 4% employment, and it's the people who guard the 96% by, like, putting them in a cage. So basically, it's a prison state.
Or
the entire state.
Right. Or they work in the control room of the mega towers.
That's what I mean. Like, they're literally the only people we see employed in Dredd are criminals or people who man the stations that lock in the facility.
Vendors, medical people that we see.
Like, there's nothing there. There's no economy. No one has money. So it's just like everything's either gray or black market. Everything's like ad hoc.
Yeah.
There's no functioning state. So for Dredd to come in and he's like, oh, this is the first, judge we've gotten in here in ages. He's like, he may as well be visiting another country. He has like, there's no state at all. It's just anarchy.
Right.
Like, this is closer to Black Hawk Down than it is to any sort of specific sci-fi.
Ooh, that's a great pull. That's a great, way more analogous film.
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, the population of that tower is larger than the population of the town I live in, and the town I live in is big enough to be considered a city.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, to your point, it's not just New York City. It's way bigger. It's way crazier. It's way more dense. It's the density of India and China smashed into each other. It's 800 million people on the East Coast of America, all stinking, breathing, choking on the same, no state other than the violence.
And even within that, they're jammed into these apartment buildings that are like mega apartment buildings with basically nothing green, nothing like fresh. It's just human misery, like Kowloon walled city style, smashed together as densely as possible because fuck you, because you have 96% unemployment. Like, the whole point is that this is a misanthropic nightmare, that there's basically nothing for people. So of course they turn to like crime or whatever.
Right. To me, the reason why The Raid is a little bit less appetizing for me is because people like Rodrigo Duterte exist. Because people are him like, yeah, that's our drug policy. Send in people with guns and martial arts to execute drug dealers.
Yeah, you probably love Dredd too. Like, if you're a fascist, you can absolutely read these movies as pro your thing. You just have to not notice any of the little digs anymore.
Yeah, but one's a little more intentionally fiction than the other.
I will say The Raid, I actually enjoyed The Raid more, but I do think The Raid has worse politics in the sense that The Raid goes out of its way to make the police good.
Yeah. I think it has better action, but worse politics, personally.
Well, yeah, there's not much
better action. There's tons of martial arts. There's lots of cool shit going on. But like, The Raid is explicitly the police are the good guys, the gang criminal guys are the bad guys, and in fact, The Raid is basically good. It is good that they're doing it.
I hate to say it, but it's almost like AVP. It's like whoever wins, we lose. Like, the judges are not good, and the drug dealers are not good, and life is not good. Everything is bad.
Everything in the movie sucks. Yeah. Like, everyone's personality, their behavior, their mindset, everyone sucks.
Anderson's kind of cool.
She casually kills people without a second thought when asked to do so when she shouldn't be doing it. She supports Dredd, who's a psychotic fascist murderer.
Yeah, but he looks cool though. His suit is great.
He does.
She
look
like
cool.
mind rapes people for fun. She's a monster, and she's the most likable character.
One you just mentioned that, Jason, but like the idea that the setting is a radioactive dystopia, but the way that the remains of America has formed itself is into these massive megatropolises.
And this is literally one megacity. There's like 4 in America,
which is
like all spread out the land.
Which is quite different from the way that things are normally depicted in, like, as we've mentioned once again, Mad Max or Fallout or whatever, where everything devolves into like settlements, disparate settlements across America.
Yeah, they still have their tech. They still have their modernity.
Is interesting to me because I don't know. I think because of the plot of the movie that we watched and that being the setting, it made me a bit uncomfortable because it kind of felt like it was messaging, and I don't really think it has that deep messaging, to be honest, but if you were to read into it, it felt like it was saying like, hey, cities are havens of crime. Like, this is urbanization is bad. Urban settings are rightfully euphemistic for signaling towards criminal elements, which is of course signaling towards people who are poor and desperate. And I honestly don't think that this movie has many politics. I think it was just made as like an homage to the comics and a fun action movie.
The comics do, though, explicitly.
But if you need to extrapolate, I felt like that's kind of where it led me.
I don't know. It starts. I think the beginning of the film is so strong, though. They show this like drone that's flying over, just scanning everyone's faces. That is not good. We all get that's bad. His opening monologue is like that one monologue from one of Joe Rogan's specials, where it's like, you ever fly over L.A. and it just looks like mold on bread. Like the city is choking. It's like they're around the cursed earth. Like, they acknowledge everything's bad, and they're not really here like, we're gonna save it. They're just saying, we're here to maintain order.
We're here to manage the demise.
He's not here saying like, I'm changing hearts and minds one arrest at a time.
I took Dredd to be, whatever your politics are, you can get something out of it. Like, if you have left-wing politics, you can absolutely identify the critiques you're making in this film, like, and what it would theoretically also be making. But if you're a fascist, you can absolutely go like, man, this movie's great. I'm gonna eat some popcorn.
Yeah, and then I could just shit on them, though.
If you're like a lib, you could be like, look at how he enforced law fairly and tried to help.
Look at how Anderson is a reformer.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there was something for everyone here, and I think that was probably intentional. Like, I don't think that this movie was trying to break anyone's brains. This was not like a faithful rendition of the 80s version in which you'd really have like an incredibly heavy-handed political message to everything.
Well, it's not quite as sardonic as that. This is a little more serious, a little more kind of straight, played straight.
Yeah.
But the Stallone one is like goofy, stupid.
But it also had a lot of messages which are kind of reactionary, and I can't tell if that was endorsing them or not, because it was very vague in the way that it played out. So, for instance, the police shooting of people early in the movie, it's repeatedly shown that he doesn't shoot soon enough. So, like, if he'd only killed people earlier, he actually would have saved more lives, which seems like in 2022 not a great message when there's an endemic of police shootings.
Well,
right?
Keep in mind, the movie came out 10 years before that. So
yeah, but it's hundreds of years after this has been a problem in the United States.
Sure.
So, like, the idea that the police need to be shooting even sooner and with even less discretion, obviously not a great message. Whether that's endorsing it or that's just part of the psychotic fascism, not clear.
I don't think it's saying he ought to have. I think there is no ought. Like, this world they've created is beyond the ought.
Yes, but
is.
There are a whole bunch of people who wouldn't have died if he'd shot people sooner.
But
then you have the drug epidemic, which is seen as like the drugs are the vice, as opposed to like the 96% unemployment, which would lead to that, or like crime is the vice, as opposed to the total lack of a functioning state, which would lead to that, right? So the identification of the problems in like by the protagonists are wrong. They're identifying the wrong things as the agents rather than as the symptoms. Yep. So there's a huge emphasis in the film on the drug slow-mo, which is a fictional drug, which is sort of like a altered brain state where you feel everything in slow motion. And that's seen as like a big plot device, I think, as Jason mentioned in our off mic discussion about like just doing cool visual effects because they wanted to do a 3D movie for some reason. But still, it's a big plot point that like drug manufacture distribution is one of the big crimes and heinous activities of this gang. But at the end of the day, like that's like the least evil thing they were doing. It doesn't even seem to be that bad a drug. Like you have slow mo for a while. Okay, they didn't even mention any negative side effects. It was just like they're evil because they're selling a drug.
You get some burn on your lip.
Yeah, whereas like they're involved in mass murder, torture, rape, extortion. Like racketeering. Like they're doing every other classical crime to a much more extreme and heinous degree.
Keep in mind, they didn't get called there because of the drug. They got called there because Anderson said triple homicide looks good. They just happened to stumble upon, Mama's the head distributor of this drug. Like, what piqued Dredd's interest is that this was a bigger bust than originally thought. Not that they were explicitly going after drug crime, because they concede in the very beginning. They say they can only go after 6% of the crime. So they voluntarily choose the most heinous because they feel that's the best use of their time. But for me, I almost think it's really not that fruitful to analyze the intent of the politics of the film, because the film is not saying, well, we really just need a Bernie Sanders to fix this. Like, the film is not articulating there is a salvageable future here. It's just a day in the life. It's a picture of this bad future. It's not saying that it's saying it's explicitly bad. It's not saying this should be worked toward or that these right-wing frames are good. It's just that those are what are there, and we're showing the consequence of that.
Sure. I think what thing you put in the lens, what subject you are showing in the film does matter, though. If you want to take any kind of
but it's all evil.
From
it's shown us to be bad.
Like the extreme emphasis on drugs, for instance, I don't think it really like mattered. It wasn't really germane to the plot all that much. It was just kind of a thing that was a central focus of the film for some reason. And I think the main reason you do that is because Americans associate drugs with crime.
Maybe.
So you say like, hey, this is an American audience. It's an American film, even though it's originally a British comic. Let's make a big drug-focused subplot because inner city crime, drugs. Like it's just like triggering our, nervous system to link these words together.
That's certainly possible. But the way I read it is the drugs were a means to an end. The drugs were how Mama had become so powerful and she had turned so violent. Like, the drugs were funding her. Pablo Escobar wasn't evil because he dealt cocaine. Pablo Escobar was evil because of the violence, the blackmailing, the coercion he used. Just because he was selling cocaine to America, like, that to me, that's not why he's a villain. That's how he became wealthy, and then he started doing evil things.
Well, the tropes about police violence were, if anything, leaned into as opposed to leaned away from. The tropes about drugs being like a central component of what it means to be a criminal, which is like a Reaganite message, was leaned into, even though, again, that wouldn't have been the message in the original comic either. I mean, there's some elements of it, but
I don't know.
It was much more pressed into in real life than it was in even fiction.
I mean, they may I don't know exactly because I haven't really read the comic, but that may very well be a real plot point. Like, maybe there is this discussion of drugs, and maybe it is all canon. I really don't know. But I don't know the comic well enough to say.
The film also touches on some weird like sex negativity as a subcurrent. So the main villain is a former sex worker who was wronged and went berserk and insane after that, and like started being a psychotic, violent murderer herself. So it seems like they're going to start making her sympathetic, but then they suddenly do like a 180, and now she's the most evil character on earth. Okay, and then there's like a woman rookie who you think, okay, this is going to be like an empowering thing, but then she's actually taken prisoner in like a tropey kind of way, and is like a damsel in distress. You think that there's going to be some sort of like, well, it's the future. They've probably gotten over some of our sexual hangups, but the only sexual stuff in the film is depicted as rape or horrifying.
No, why would after nuclear annihilation would people get over sexual hangups?
Well, when society degenerates, you don't usually have the same sort of moral strictures over like what you do.
No, but when society degenerates, you certainly get way more masculine sexual like violence.
No, but the entire film, the only depictions of sexuality, despite the fact that the main enemy is of a different gender than Dredd, and that the sidekick is a different gender, you think there'd be like romantic hooks in some way. None whatsoever. In fact, she interacts brainwave with this guy who they're holding captive, and the only sex we basically get is him like inappropriately, violently assaulting her.
Which is,
and then later they refer to rape again.
Yeah, it's explicitly not sexy.
Like the one of the only, I will say, black characters in the film who's depicted as like a torturer and rapist
of white women. Yeah, like it leaned into some really, really fascist shit there. Now, is that supposed to be that? Is it an accident? Is it an homage to the comics? I have no clue.
I don't know. I got to counter that. Once again, the medical guy is black. Two of the judges are black. One's corrupt, one is not. Like her second in command's like an Eastern European guy who's been in a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, but we're
like,
talking about screen time and like
there's lots of Hispanic people. Like
there are two positive black characters who have a combined total of maybe 3 minutes in the film. Whereas this main black guy who's evil has about 25 to 30 minutes in the film, including a grotesque rape scene and then an intention to murder and rape that same person later. There's some really fucked up elements
once again, like,
there.
What difference would it have made if they made that character white? I don't think any. It's the sample size is tiny. It's just one character.
No, but like it's just like Jason, just like Alex is talking about with the drug stuff. It's like it's what people expect to see. You know, it feeds into pre-existing expectations, which are incorrect and biased. And like, I don't think the film is smart enough or well thought out enough to be intentionally like feeding into fascist fantasies. But incidentally, I think it does in some ways. You know. And that's not really an indictment of a dumb action film, but
yeah, I just don't expect films to be progressive. That's not what I'm looking for when I watch a film.
Well, you don't have to expect them to be progressive, but you can expect them to not.
Like, in fact, the movies that pretend to be progressive are all fucking garbage. Basically, every modern, we're trying to be more intersectional, we're trying to be more representative, are all like evil, soulless husks of corporate, extracting machines. To me, this is a more genuine
filmmakers
film.
who are left wing. Like you don't have to be a psychopath to make a film. Like
no, what I'm saying is
you can make a genuinely left wing film.
What I'm saying is Marvel's Eternals is marketed as like Avengers but liberal. It's not. None of it is.
Well, in any case, whether or not it was intentional, whether or not that's what you were seeking in a film, there are some pretty questionable narratives in the film, which, as I agree with it, they're almost certainly not intentional. Like I don't think they were sitting down like, how can we lean into fascist tropes in every area, especially because they're like soft fascist tropes from America, specifically about like police violence or black people having a higher crime incidence or the inner city connection and the drug connection. Like it's just, as someone who's lived in the United States their entire life and has grown up with the incredible plethora of incredibly racist, misogynistic, reactionary tropes around crime, they hit almost every single one in a way that I wasn't really expecting, both because the original comic is British and because it was sort of an anti-fascist parody. So I wouldn't have expected it to some ways like play into those same tired cliches that almost every crime thing leans into.
That makes me think of movies like Starship Troopers, though. Like that movie is intentionally ridiculous, and the audience still didn't get it, and most people I was viscerally put off by that film.
Yeah,
and most people were like, "Oh, the cool fascists will kill the bugs." Like even when you go out of your way to make it obvious it's satire, like it doesn't work either. So
I'm not telling them how to make the film.
But,
I'm saying I was surprised to see the same tropes in it.
To me, I try to analyze the art, not the politics, because to me that's easy to separate. That may not be the case.
You're the wrong podcast. Then,
yeah, but that's what we're doing.
We're doing the art and culture section, not the politics section.
It's always both.
I can't turn it off.
Well,
but yeah, I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, so I guess I'm just surprised because I didn't hate the film. It was fine. It was like average to me, but I don't think it succeeded if it was even trying to be a political movie, because it had a really messy mixture of different stuff in there, including some of the very oldest, most reactionary tropes, as well as anti-fascist parody, as well as like lib reformist shit. Like it was all over the place.
It's definitely not trying to be a political movie. It's trying to be an accurate and nice homage and send up to a very well-liked character and a competent action film. And in that way, I think it succeeds.
And it kind of tells you how like black-pilled the overall ethos of the film is, which I guess is true of the comic, that a woman who's been savagely raped and permanently disfigured as a former sex worker is given a torture device and then thrown to her death, and we're like, okay, that's cool. That's literally the ending of the film, and everyone watching it's like, yeah, that's great.
She's given a torture device? Cool. What does that mean?
She's made to feel it for 100 times longer than she should, that she's falling to her death.
Yeah, but that's subverting. That's just a twist.
But there was no reason to do it. It was just fuck you. Like there was no advantage to doing that.
Yeah, but
Judge Dredd, who the rest of the film never does anything that's not like lawful, decides to torture her like to do an ironic punishment.
Yeah,
even though there's no reason to do it.
I just say he turned the use of the drug on its head. I wouldn't call it really to torture, but it's not a torture.
It was used to torture in the same way she used it to torture the 3 people she threw in the first place. Yeah. So I think the movie's established that it's needlessly cruel. But to speak to something else, and this is one of the reasons why I think the message was so confused in this film. Even if the director or writer thought they were doing a political thing, I don't think the actors understood it. Here's a couple quotes I found from Wikipedia about how these actors thought about their own characters. According to Carl Urban about Dredd, he viewed the character as an average man with an insanely tough job in a fragmenting society and likened Dredd's heroism to that of a fireman.
Whoa, really?
So he
That
saw
is
this
shocking.
as purely a good guy.
Wow, he really missed.
So
But how did he do
I
such a
don't
good
think Carl Urban's a fascist. I think he just doesn't understand.
How did he do such a good job, though, if he doesn't understand the character?
Because he's a great actor, and he
We
just
got-
kind of leaned into it.
He's just
gotta-
that damn good.
We gotta shoot this fire.
I
just
do
so
not think
good.
he understood what Judge Dredd is, because that's insane. That's the most
Really?
insane take
Wow.
possible, and that's the guy who did the
That
character.
I didn't expect to actually be shocked. That is very surprising.
That's the most shocking thing I've heard.
That is the only thing he could have said that was shocking. Because if he was just like, "Yeah, he's a fascist," and I thought I should play like a fascist,
What
or
if
if he's like,
he's-
"Hey, he's a lib," it's like, what?
But what if he's trolling? That sounds so absurd that he might be trolling the interview.
I don't think he's trolling, Jace. This
don't
is
know,
like a
yeah.
neutral interview. Anyway, Lena Headey, who is the main villain in the film, played Mama. Again, a character who was a former sex worker who was horribly raped and disfigured, and then as a result went insane with revenge. I think of Mama like an old great white shark who's just waiting for someone bigger and stronger to show up and kill her. She's ready for it. In fact, she can't wait for it to happen. She's an addict, so she's dead in that way. But that last knock just hasn't come.
I mean, I actually think that's a pretty interesting reading on that character. Because she constantly has throughout this film this air of
Fatalism.
yeah, she's very fatalistic the entire time. And she's almost just like, get on with it. Like, she keeps being bothered. Like, I have to escalate the stakes again. I got to lock the building down. I got to call.
I understand.
I mean, she's weird, but that's a pretty interesting
She's
take.
talking about drug addiction as if that's a death sentence
I was
as
gonna
opposed
say,
to
yeah.
something you can recover from.
I was on board until she basically said, like, if
Yeah, I
you're
mean,
addicted to drugs,
The end kind of nosedive, but I thought the rest of that analysis was pretty interesting.
Well, the end was what I was reading it for.
Well, you got it then.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because she's treating drug addiction as if it's a death sentence, which is an insane reactionary thing to do. Yeah, it's hard to recover from drug addictions. It's difficult. But worst comes to worst, and you even do slip back into drug addiction, that's still not a death sentence unless you overdose or there's something horrifically wrong happen. Like, there are tons of people who live as drug addicts and they live lives.
Yeah, but maybe she's implying like she's an addict with no intent to get over it. She's like leaning into it. She's
Even
made it
if
her
she
own
doesn't
identity.
intend to get over it, why is that a death sentence? Like, she's leaning into some really confused reactionary tropes about
I don't know,
drugs
maybe
that
just,
people
like-
believe because they don't know what drugs are.
Like Mama's whole life is spiraling though, and she's like, she's embracing the kind of the nihilism of it. I
it's
don't know.
just telling to me that the two lead characters, the main protagonist and the main antagonist, have really weird and bizarre takes, even on their own characters.
Yeah,
That they
what-
played fairly well.
What Thurlby have to say about Anderson?
I did read that one too. I don't know if it was as exciting. She thought of herself as a gray character because she knew so much. So she was like, my character is the opposite of Dredd, who's all black and white. I'm pure gray because I can mind rape people. I don't know. It was a weird thing. It's not worth paraphrasing. But yeah, I don't know. Like, to me, this tells me that the characters, that they didn't give them good enough direction or prep, because that's wildly misunderstanding the character of Dredd. And it's certainly misunderstanding the reality of people with drug addiction when the main trope that she's playing is a drug addict. So that's very troubling to me if I wanted to like think that the actors understood what the fuck they were doing with these characters.
Oh, they did a good job. Even if
I
they don't
liked their
understand.
performances because I think these are both very strong actors, but I really don't think they understood what they were doing on a foundational level. These are not method actors, apparently, or their method is madness.
Also, just on to veer back into completely non-political criticism or commentary, I didn't really understand the choice to have like a person with psychic powers in the film. Like, it felt kind of
Well, because it's canon, is
it felt-
why.
I never read the comics, so I assumed
She's a central character.
This is one of the least weird things that's in the comics.
Yeah.
This is like JoJo's Bizarre Adventures level shit in the original comics. So
Oh well, then it's extremely weird and incomprehensible.
it's
She's
completely baffling.
She is a totally that's totally normal and extremely central character to the plot way down the line.
Because if it were like a Shadowrun universe where that was like a thing that happened to people, that,
Well,
like,
we were
I would be
joking. Go ahead, Ian.
no, I was just gonna kind of trail off and say like,
We were joking because Alex has recently watched Bright, that fucking garbage Will Smith Netflix movie.
yeah.
But that's more like Shadowrun, where there's fucking orcs in our universe.
Yeah.
Where this is just like, no, but it's just an extension. It's just the sci-fiing of nuclear radiation.
Sure.
Because there's like whole sorts of monsters and like it's very RoboCop. You know, in RoboCop, when the like nuclear waste gets thrown at that guy and he melts,
Mm-hmm.
it becomes like disgusting pile of mud, and then the dad from that '70s show smashes into him with a car. He turns into like dust. Like it's all very like gritty, like you know, '80s
Schlock.
kind of schlocky like violence.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this film has a lot of that DNA from all these. You know, I had this discussion with Alex yesterday. There's a lot of artists who came out of the Red Scare and the nuclear annihilation threat and the Cold War, and that got imbued into their art. The guy who wrote Watchmen and V for Vendetta, Alan Moore. It has a lot of that DNA. And so that kind of all that stuff got captured and became its own media sphere, and now there's nostalgia for that era. So we have games like Cyberpunk 2077 coming out, which, once again, for all its flaws, it's got the fucking Mega Towers, like identically from Dredd. That is 1-to-1 inspiration. You know, the guy who made Cyberpunk, like all these people are having convergent thoughts. All the very first sci-fi writers who are writing, like, you know, Dreams, Electric Sheep's Dreams, all that stuff. All these people had the same ideas all coalescing, and they were coalescing in different ways. Some focus more on hacking in the digital realm. Some focus more on the gritty violence of a kind of climate changed world. Some focus on the politics of it. Of, you know, as you say, like the Dredd, you know, 2000 AD is explicitly about the fascism and the kind of how those in charge would use the new technology of the era to kind of secure their positions permanently. There's all sorts of interesting stuff going on in this kind of subgenre, and I liked taking a dive into that for 90 minutes.
And I think I kind of actually enjoyed, like, I grew up on those. You know, my dad was a big fan of like those 80s action movies, and I actually kind of enjoyed that this film didn't, it like clearly was along the same kind of plot course and had the same kind of protagonist, but didn't waste any time trying to moralize them.
Right. It's not like you should love Dredd. Oh, isn't Dredd such a wonderful guy? Whereas in the 90s Stallone film, he's like, there's literally celebrations for him, of people adoring him and like throwing roses about like celebrating him as the greatest man ever because he killed his evil twin brother. It's like, no, this is just a day in the life of Dredd. And they comment on, like, you know, if you don't die today, you'll die tomorrow. You know, if you fail this test, you know, like, it's so banal. It's so just like, everything sucks.
Yeah, I think that's the difference 6 years make, because you guys are similar age and I'm a little older. I didn't exactly grow up on these films, and like to the degree that I was exposed to them, I didn't really like the 80s, like rah-rah American machismo, guns, and no ethics whatsoever. Always kind of made me want to throw up. So this is like, it doesn't offend me to the same degree because it's not even like the top 10 most extreme examples of that. But yeah, like this kind of thing doesn't really do anything for me. This kind of like throwback to a thing I never liked in the first place probably doesn't work. And I think it's really just like what you grew up with and what you experienced and how old you were when you experienced it.
Well, I didn't experience those things as a kid. I mean, to me, Stranger Things is way more grossly nostalgic and fucked up.
Yeah,
like,
but it also sucks.
Well, no, like the first season. Like, what I'm saying is this doesn't bask in the nostalgia. It just kind of pulls a couple threads from that era and that kind of art.
To me, it pulls an enormous number of threads, but that's because I'm talking about things like all those crime tropes. But
yeah, but once again, like I don't like the 80s because of like Reagan and the horrible evil shit that happened. The 80s is just known culturally as like a very interesting period of our history, where there's extreme highs and extreme like wealth and partying and drugs, and then horrible extreme lows of, people being let out of, asylums and deregulation and cutting off of social safety nets. Like it's a weird kind of bipolar period of our history.
To me, this was Death Wish meets Black Hawk Down. It was 80s crime film filled with all the reactionary tropes there, but it was also a lone survivor in a foreign land where there's no law and it's a failed state. And I mean, that makes for an interesting action film. I definitely don't think it made for an interesting political vignette, and it's almost good it didn't, because I don't think it would have been a good message. It's almost like I'm kind of glad it stayed out of the political element, because I don't know that it would have gotten it right.
If this was made by Zack Snyder, this would be one of the most disgusting films ever made.
Right, it would have been just relishing in fascism.
Because Zack Snyder would be accidentally basking in the fascism and the violence and the blood.
Huge parentheses around accidentally.
I mean, he's really dumb, Alex. Like,
yeah.
It'd also be a much more visually disgusting film.
Yeah, it'd be even grayer somehow.
Yeah, though if you added,
you would have cut all the slow-mo scenes that were good.
One of the few things that was nice about this film is it didn't waste your time. Like every scene just kind of did what it needed to do in the next scene. Like they didn't fuck around. In fact, there were scenes that were almost cut like It felt like they were cut. Like the woman, there's a fight between the psychic woman and her like evil corrupt cop antagonist. They don't even bother to do a 5-second cutaway of her like reading her mind. They're just like, the audience can figure it out. Just have her shoot her.
There's a lot of implication which could have used another 5-10 minutes screen time.
And it's like, fuck it. Like this movie kind of knew when to get in and get out. So like I kind of can appreciate a movie that can cover all this insane ground in like 95 minutes.
Yeah, that's why I kind of call it like a roller coaster. It's not the most exciting roller coaster you've ever been on, but roller coasters don't waste your time. If you're sitting on a roller coaster looking at your watch like I'm fatigued, you got a problem.
It was kind of like a GED. Like it's not what you necessarily wanted, but you got it done. You qualified. You're out. So,
once again, rookie pass. Like it's a pass, and that's what matters.
It was a hard C- for me, and I didn't mind it nearly as much as some of the other stuff we watched. So yeah, you know,
he's only 3 percentage points behind.
Yeah, I mean, I think we haven't talked about that many movies yet. The top of the ranking for me so far has been the remake of Predator, which I like.
God,
Been looking at the Christmas movies.
Oh, I've heard the Christmas movies.
Bad Santa is a 10 out of 10 for me.
If you put the 2011 Predator movie above It's a Wonderful Life, I don't know what to tell you.
No, that I was not considering the Christmas
movies. Can't be friends.
The other two don't still rank below it, but A Wonderful Life definitely ranks at the very top. But Dredd is above 2000 whatever Predator.
Oh right,
yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah,
you didn't like Bad Santa.
Oh no, I hated it.
Whereas Alex like almost pissed our pants when he was fucking with Thurman Merman.
Yeah, but I kind of feel about the same about Dredd. Like I don't think I'd watch it again, but there were moments that I enjoyed.
I gotta watch Bad Santa again.
Like it was funny, but like it was so horrible also that I like.
Listen,
watch. Those are the same universe.
I'm a hardcore Irish Catholic. I can't enjoy such hedonism.
Is Irish Catholic like a genetic type now?
It
like,
is, yeah.
It's his class talent.
It's a phenotype.
It's his signature. He's
visually showing on.
Specialized in 2 classes.
I was born with a genetic Catholicism.
All right, folks, we're rambling.
We are.
We just began rambling.
We will let you watch the film and decide for yourself whether it was a fun time. And until next time, when someone else hosts, vamos, vaya con Dios.
Pass.
Vamos conmigo.
That's it.
Rookie.
Boy.
Hockey pads.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoy what we do here at the Non-Essential Workers Podcast and you want to support us, please check us out at patreon.com/non-essential-workers-podcast or by clicking the link below.
For $5, you get access to the Patreon feed and twice as many total episodes.
How many more?
I'll say it one more time for the back. Twice. Anyways, thanks and see you next time.